Hey friends! Glad you're here at God of Fiction. We've cooked up something special. What if Harry brought an army of demons to the Battle of Hogwarts to destroy Voldemort? Liking and subscribing really helps us out. Okay, story time. Chapter 1, The Space Between Worlds. The throne room of Malfoy smelled like burning iron and old blood. Harry stood at the center of a circle carved into obsidian floor, runes pulsing with a light that wasn't quite red and wasn't quite black, somewhere in between, like the last ember of a dying star. Around him, the hall stretched upward into darkness that moved, that breathed, that watched. Pillars of fused bone and volcanic glass lined the approach to the throne, each one thrumming with a resonance Harry could feel in his teeth. He'd stopped being afraid of this place 11 months ago. Malfoy sat on his throne, a massive construction of petrified wings and blackened steel, and regarded Harry with 6 eyes that burned like furnace doors left ajar. The Demon King was enormous, easily 15 feet tall even seated, his form somewhere between a great armored knight and a bird of prey. Feathers of dark metal cascaded from his shoulders, and when he moved, the sound was like swords being drawn from scabbards. "You come to collect, then," Malfoy said. His voice resonated from everywhere at once, from the walls, from the floor, from inside Harry's own chest. "The mortal boy who walked into my kingdom uninvited and had the audacity to bargain." "I come to collect," Harry confirmed. He didn't bow. He hadn't bowed since the 3rd month, when he'd killed Malfoy's champion in single combat and earned the right to stand as an equal petitioner. 3 trials completed. 3 debts paid. The pact stands. The pact stands, Malfoy repeated, and something that might have been amusement flickered across his terrible face. "You understand what you're asking? An army of the abyss has not marched in the mortal world since before your kind learned to stack stones. I understand perfectly. And you understand the cost. Not to you, that debt is settled. The cost to your world. When my legions walk your earth, the veil between realms will thin. Other things may slip through. Your mortal wizards will feel it in their bones for generations." Harry met those 6 burning eyes without flinching. "My mortal wizards are being slaughtered by a man who tore his own soul apart for power. I think they'll survive a thinner veil." Malfoy leaned forward. The throne groaned. "And if they fear you more than they feared him? Then they'll have good instincts." The Demon King laughed, a sound like an avalanche hitting a forge. He spread one massive hand, talons clicking against the armrest, and the runes in the floor blazed bright enough to cast Harry's shadow up the distant walls. "I like you, Harry Potter. I have liked very few mortals in my long existence. Most come here sniveling, offering scraps, trying to bind what they cannot comprehend." Malfoy stood, and the ceiling seemed to rise with him, the darkness pulling back like a curtain. "You came here with nothing but fury and will, and you took what you needed. That is the language of the abyss. Is that a yes?" "It was a yes the moment you cut the head from Vrethik and wore his horns as a crown." Malfoy descended from his throne, each step making the ground shudder. He stopped before Harry, close enough that the heat rolling off his form made the air shimmer. "The legions are yours. 3 generals, 30,000 soldiers, for the span of one mortal battle. When the fight is done and your enemy is ash, they return to me." "Agreed." "And Harry Potter." Malfoy extended a talon and touched Harry's forehead, right over the scar that had once been his most famous feature. The scar that was now just one mark among many, barely visible beneath the sigils that traced his skin like circuit paths. "Do make it entertaining. My court will be watching." Harry allowed himself a thin smile. "I'll try not to disappoint." He found Azriath waiting outside the throne room, leaning against one of the bone pillars with the casual disinterest of someone who'd been alive for 6,000 years and had seen exactly none of it impress him. "Well?" The demon's voice was dry and precise. He looked almost human, if humans were 7 feet tall with skin like polished slate and eyes that glowed amber. He wore something resembling a military coat, all sharp angles and dark leather, and his fingers, long, clawed, elegant, were toying with a sliver of bone the way a bored student might flip a pencil. Did our king make you grovel? No one makes me grovel. That's what I like about you. Also what I find exhausting about you. Asriath pushed off the pillar and fell into step beside Harry. His stride was languid, unhurried, even as Harry moved with purpose through the corridor that connected Malfoy's domain to the mustering grounds. So we're doing this. We're actually walking into the mortal world to fight a wizard who split his soul into party favors. We're doing this tonight. Tonight. Asriath's amber eyes flickered with something that might have been excitement, carefully hidden beneath layers of sardonic composure. You know, I've fought in 37 wars across 6 realms. Never once in the mortal plane. I'm almost nervous. You're never nervous. I said almost. He pulled out the bone sliver and examined it like a cigar he was considering lighting. Caeldaths is already armored. Has been for 3 hours. I think he sleeps in it, honestly. And Seraphix is, well, you know how she gets before a battle. Where is she? Terrifying the lesser demons for sport, last I checked. Something about keeping their fear responses sharp. Asriath gave a thin smile that showed too many teeth. She's not wrong, tactically. Fear makes them faster. They emerged onto the mustering grounds, a vast plateau of cracked stone suspended over nothing, like a shelf carved into the side of an infinite cliff. Below, there was only the deep dark, the kind that had weight and presence. Above, a sky that burned in slow, perpetual motion, colors that had no names in any human language shifting and coiling like oil on water. And filling the plateau, rank upon rank upon rank, the army. Harry had spent months with them. Training alongside them, learning their hierarchies, earning the respect of their officers. These weren't mindless beasts. The Abyssal Legions were organized, disciplined, ancient in their martial traditions. Foot soldiers in formations that had been perfected over millennia, creatures of every shape and terrible size, clad in armor grown from their own bones or forged in the deep fires. Pike carriers that stood 8 feet tall with insectoid chitin gleaming black. Cavalry mounted on beasts that looked like someone had crossed a wolf with a landslide. Mages, yes, demons had their own spellcasters, floating in clusters, their hands wreathed in fire that burned without heat until directed. 30,000. For one night. It would be enough. There you are. The voice came from above and behind, like silk dragged over broken glass. Seraphix descended on wings that looked like stained glass designed by a madman, translucent panels of deep violet and black, veined with something luminous. She landed beside Harry without a sound, folding those wings behind her with feline grace. She stood eye to eye with him, her appearance the most human of the 3 generals, beautiful in the way a perfect sword was beautiful, with hair like white fire and features sharp enough to cut. Her eyes were solid black, pupil to scara, and when she smiled, it was with the satisfaction of a predator who'd just spotted dinner. The little king returns from the big king's hall, she said. Are we going to war? Tonight, Harry said. Oh, wonderful. She practically purred it. I've been so bored, Harry. You can't imagine. 6,000 years in this realm and the politics have become so dreadfully predictable. A real war, in a new world, against an enemy who thinks he's immortal. She pressed a hand to her chest in mock reverence. It's like a gift. Don't play with your food, Harry told her. We hit hard, we hit fast, we end it. This isn't entertainment. Everything is entertainment, darling. The question is whether you're the audience or the performer. She leaned in, conspiratorial. And you have always been a performer, whether you admit it or not. The target is Voldemort, Harry said, ignoring her. He turned to face all 3 of them, Asriath with his dry skepticism, Seraphix with her predatory delight, and approaching from the ranks like a mountain deciding to go for a walk, Caeldaths. The war demon said nothing. He never said much. He was 9 feet tall, built like someone had scaled up a human warrior and then added additional layers of dense, plated muscle. His skin was the color of deep rust, his eyes like molten copper. He wore armor that seemed fused to his body, great plates of dark metal that moved with him seamlessly, part of him rather than something worn. A helm of curved horns framed his face, and across his back he carried a weapon that could charitably be called a sword only if you ignored that it was 7 feet long and a foot wide. Cael'That stopped before Harry and inclined his head, 1 precise degree. Respect, from a being who respected almost nothing. Brief me, he said. 2 words. Cael'That was efficient. Tomorrow, your world's time, the enemy will commit his full forces to attack Hogwarts, that's a castle, a school, in northern Scotland. He'll bring everything. Death Eaters, human soldiers, maybe 100, all capable of killing magic. Giants, 20 feet tall, maybe 20 of them. Dementors, spectral entities that feed on human happiness and can consume souls. Familiar, Cael'That rumbled. We have similar creatures. Weaker, no doubt. Acromantulas, giant spiders, hundreds of them. Werewolves. Inferi, reanimated corpses, think slow, fire vulnerable. Cannon fodder, Asriath assessed. Mostly. The real threat is Voldemort himself and his inner circle. Maybe 20 genuinely dangerous wizards, fast, creative, decades of combat experience. And Voldemort. Harry paused. He's the most powerful dark wizard in living memory. He's split his soul into 7 objects to make himself functionally immortal. I've destroyed 5 of the 7. 1 more remains before I can kill him, and it's his snake, a creature called Nagini that never leaves his side. So we kill the snake, then we kill him, Cael'That said. That's the shape of it. Elegant. The war demon's version of enthusiasm. The complication, Harry continued, is that there will be defenders inside Hogwarts. Students, teachers, members of a resistance group. They're on our side but they won't know that immediately. They've never seen anything like you and their first instinct will be fear. As it should be, Seraphix murmured. I need them alive and unharmed. Any demon that kills a defender answers to me personally. Silence fell across the mustering grounds, not complete silence, because 30,000 demons created a low, constant rumble of movement and breath, but the 3 generals went still. That was the authority Harry had earned. Not through birthright or title, but through walking into the abyss alone at 17 and spending a year proving that he deserved to command. Your orders are clear, Cael'That said. Crystal, Asriath agreed, though his tone suggested he found the constraint amusing. Seraphix tilted her head, those black eyes studying Harry with ancient intelligence. You still care about them. The mortals in that castle. The ones who didn't follow you into the dark. They're why I went into the dark in the first place. Sentimental. But she said it softly, almost with warmth. I suppose that's allowed. Even hell respects loyalty. Harry walked to the edge of the plateau alone. Below him, the deep dark swirled and breathed. He stood at the precipice and let himself feel the full weight of what was coming. Not fear, he'd burned through fear somewhere between his second trial and his duel with the champion Vrethik. But wait. Gravity. The understanding that in a few hours, he would tear open the barrier between realms and lead an army into a war that would reshape his world forever. He looked down at his hands. They were scarred, marked, no longer the hands of a schoolboy. Sigils traced from his wrists to his shoulders, the language of demonic pacts written in his skin like tattoos that sometimes glowed when his emotions ran high. He wore armor now, light, fitted, black metal chased with the deep fire runes of the abyssal forges. His wand was still there, strapped to his forearm, but it was one weapon among several now. The holly and phoenix feather, 12 years of partnership. He'd never abandoned it, never would. But he'd grown beyond it. His glasses were gone. Had been for months. Some combination of the sigils and the abyssal energies had fixed what was broken in him, not just his eyes but deeper things, the malnutrition of a childhood spent in a cupboard, the lingering damage of a dozen near-death experiences. He was lean, sharp, hard in ways that had nothing to do with muscle and everything to do with intent. A year ago, he'd stood over Dumbledore's broken body at the base of the astronomy tower and felt the world collapse. Everything he'd relied on, the old man's wisdom, the Order's strength, the comforting belief that the adults had a plan, shattered on the stone alongside those half-moon spectacles. He'd tried to do it the way Dumbledore wanted. For about 3 weeks. The camping, the researching, the slow careful hunt for Horcruxes with nothing but a few cryptic memories and a deluminator. And then he'd sat in that tent in the Forest of Dean, listening to the radio rattle off names of the dead, and something in him had snapped. Not broken. Snapped into place. He'd been fighting Voldemort for 6 years with one hand tied behind his back, playing by rules that the other side ignored entirely. Dumbledore had wanted him to win through love and sacrifice and noble self-destruction, to walk willingly to his death and hope that was enough. The power the Dark Lord knows not. Harry had decided to find a different power the Dark Lord knew not. The veil in the Department of Mysteries. That was where it started. A gateway that wizards feared and didn't understand, a thin place between the mortal world and something else. Harry had gone back alone, slipped past the Ministry's token security in those chaotic first weeks after Dumbledore's death, and stood before that ragged curtain. He'd listened to the voices beyond it, the same voices that had whispered to him in his 5th year, that Luna had heard too. And he'd stepped through. What he'd found on the other side wasn't death. It was the abyss, the space between worlds, the realm that wizards had glimpsed only in their worst nightmares and oldest legends. Demons weren't what the stories said. They weren't evil incarnate, weren't Satan's soldiers, weren't mindless destroyers. They were old. Civilizations that predated humanity by eons, with their own cultures, politics, wars, and hierarchies. Some were cruel by human standards. Some were more honorable than any wizard Harry had ever met. All of them respected one thing above all else, strength of will. Harry had it in abundance. The first months had been survival. Learning the rules, the language, the ways to avoid being consumed by things that saw a human soul as a delicacy. He'd fought. God, he'd fought. Every day. Against creatures that made Voldemort's menagerie look like a petting zoo. He'd died twice, technically, and dragged himself back both times through sheer refusal to stay down. The demons had noticed. They always noticed willpower. A human who wouldn't break, who kept getting up, who learned their ways and spoke their language and met their challenges with open eyes, that was rare enough to be valuable. Interesting enough to be cultivated. Azriath had found him first. Or rather, Harry had stumbled into Azriath's territory half-dead after his 4th week, and the demon had been intrigued enough not to kill him immediately. "You're either the bravest mortal I've ever encountered or the stupidest," Azriath had said, watching Harry try to set his own broken arm with the detached interest of a naturalist observing an unusual beetle. "Can't I be both?" Harry had gritted out. "I suppose you can." And Azriath had set the arm for him, with a casual efficiency that suggested he'd done it before, and asked what a human child was doing in the abyss. Harry had told him everything. Voldemort, the prophecy, the Horcruxes, Dumbledore's death. The whole wretched story. And Azriath had listened with those amber eyes half-lidded, turning his bone sliver between his fingers, and at the end said, "So you're here because your world's greatest wizard wanted you to die nobly, and you'd rather win ugly." Something like that. Welcome to the abyss, Harry Potter. You'll fit right in. That had been the beginning. Now Harry pulled himself from memory and turned from the precipice. The army was assembled. His generals waited. The gate awaited his command. He walked back to where the 3 of them stood, Azriath cleaning his claws with that bone sliver, Seraphic sitting on nothing. She did that, just hovered with her legs crossed as if an invisible chair existed for her convenience, and Caeldat standing like a statue that occasionally breathed. "The gate," Harry said. "I'm opening it to Shell Cottage, a safe house on the coast of Britain. We stage there, we move to Hogwarts under cover of darkness, and when Voldemort commits his forces at dawn, we hit him from behind. Dawn assault. Classic pincer movement." Azriath nodded approvingly. "Though I assume the 30,000 demons appearing from thin air will somewhat diminish the surprise element." "The surprise isn't that we're there," Harry said. "The surprise is that we exist at all. Voldemort doesn't know about any of this. He thinks I'm dead or hiding. He has no concept of the abyss, no framework to understand what's about to happen to him. By the time he adapts, it'll be over." "And if he adapts faster than you expect?" Azriath asked. Not challenging, genuinely asking. This was why Harry valued him. The demon never let confidence calcify into arrogance. "Then that's why I have you three. Voldemort's strength is that he's brilliant and creative under pressure. Our strength is that we have 30,000 soldiers, 3 generals with 6 millennia of combat experience each, and me." Harry smiled, and there was nothing warm in it. "He can adapt all he wants. It won't be enough." "I do enjoy your confidence," Seraphix said from her invisible perch. "It's almost demonic." "He learned from the best," Azriath said dryly. Caeldat's made a sound that might have been a laugh. From him, that was practically a standing ovation. Harry raised his hand and the sigils along his arm blazed to life, deep red gold, pulsing with the rhythm of his heartbeat. The air in front of him split. Not like apparition, not like a portkeys hook, this was something more fundamental. Reality opened like a wound, edges burning with otherworldly fire, and through it Harry could see grey sky, smell salt air, hear waves crashing on rock. Shell Cottage. England. Home. "Move the legions through in formation," Harry told Caeldats. "Standard deployment pattern. No engagement until my order." The war demon nodded and turned to the assembled ranks. His voice, when he raised it, carried like thunder across the plateau. 30,000 demons stirred to attention, a sound like tectonic plates grinding together. Harry looked at Azriath and Seraphix. "With me." He stepped through the gate. The transition between the abyss and the mortal world felt like surfacing from deep water, pressure releasing all at once, air that tasted thin and clean after months of breathing the heavy atmosphere of the demon realms. Harry's boots hit sand and he staggered for half a step before finding his balance. Shell Cottage stood 50 yards up the beach, warm light glowing in its windows against the grey twilight of an English spring evening. The garden was overgrown, more than when he'd last seen it, and there were additions, extra structures, expanded wards, the telltale signs of a safe house stretched beyond its intended capacity. Azriath emerged behind him, looked around, and wrinkled his nose. "It's so flat. And grey. And, is that water? An entire sea of water just sitting there?" "Welcome to England," Harry said. "I already hate it." Seraphix stepped through with considerably more grace, her wings catching the sea wind for a moment before she folded them away, and as she did, they shimmered and faded, along with most of her more obviously inhuman features. She still looked otherworldly, but passably human now. A talent of hers. "Oh, I don't know," she said, inhaling deeply. "It has a certain, rustic charm. Like visiting someone's quaint country garden after living in a palace." The gate behind them pulsed, widening, and the first ranks of the army began to pour through, silent, ordered, a river of dark metal and burning eyes flowing onto the English beach in precise formation. Caeldats emerged at the head of the 1st Battalion, his massive form unmistakable even among the largest demons. Harry turned his attention to the cottage. The wards were screaming, he could feel them, could see them with the senses he developed in the abyss, layers of protective magic flaring brilliant gold as they detected the incursion. Inside, there would be panic. Wands drawn, emergency protocols activated. He started walking toward the cottage. The front door burst open before he was halfway there. Bill Weasley came out first, wand raised, face tight with controlled fear. Behind him, Fleur with her wand and a hex already forming at her lips. Behind them, crowded in the doorway, more faces, Dean Thomas, Luna Lovegood, Griphook, Ollivander. Bill's eyes took in the beach behind Harry, the gate, the army pouring through, the three figures flanking him, and his wand hand trembled. Just slightly. Credit to the man, he didn't run. What the bloody hell, Bill started. Bill. Harry raised a hand, open, showing his palm. It's me. It's Harry. Bill's eyes snapped to him. Really looked at him. And Harry watched the recognition fight with the disbelief, because the person standing before him looked like Harry Potter the way a sword looked like the ore it was forged from. Same material, completely different form. Harry. Bill's voice cracked. Harry, we thought you were dead. You've been gone for a year. What are those things? They're my army, Harry said simply. I'm back, Bill. And I'm ending this war tomorrow. Army? Fleur had moved to stand beside her husband, and despite her wide eyes, her wand was steady. She'd always been made of steel, that one. Harry, those are demons. I can feel them. The old blood in my veins can feel them. What have you done? What I had to. Azriath leaned into Harry's peripheral vision. Shall I wait out here with the army, or am I invited inside? I'm asking because I was raised with manners, unlike some. Who is that? Bill demanded. That's Azriath. He's one of my generals. Generals? Seraphix laughed, delicate and cutting. I think you broke him, Harry. Luna Lovegood pushed past everyone in the doorway and walked barefoot down the garden path, her dirty blonde hair wild, her eyes wide but not frightened. Never frightened, Luna. She walked right up to Harry and studied his face with that unnerving directness she'd always had. You went through the veil, she said. Not a question. Yes. I always thought someone should. Everyone was so afraid of it. She looked past him at the army still flowing through the gate, now spreading across the beach in formations that went back hundreds of yards. They're quite beautiful, aren't they? In a terrible sort of way. Luna, Bill started. Oh, hush, Bill. It's Harry. Look at his eyes, they're the same eyes. He's just, more now. She turned back to Harry and smiled. Welcome home. Harry felt something crack in his chest, the first genuine warmth he'd felt since stepping back into this world. Thanks, Luna. Touching, Azriath murmured. But perhaps we could continue the reunion inside? Your remaining generals are going to need briefing space, and I could use a chair that wasn't made from someone's skeleton. Bill looked at Harry. Looked at the demons. Looked at his wife. Then he lowered his wand and stepped back from the door, running a hand over his scarred face. Inside, he said. Now. All of you. You're going to explain every single, he gestured incoherently at the beach, all of this. I'll explain what I can, Harry said, already moving toward the door. But I wasn't joking about the timeline. Voldemort's attacking Hogwarts tomorrow. I need to get word to the Order, to Kingsley, to anyone who's fighting. How do you know he's attacking tomorrow? Harry glanced back. Because I'm going to make sure he does. The kitchen of Shell Cottage was not designed to accommodate 2 demons and a dozen increasingly panicked humans. Azriath had folded himself into a chair at the table with his long legs crossed and was examining a teacup with academic interest. Seraphix had declined a seat and was leaning against the wall by the window, occasionally glancing outside where Kaeldats was directing the demon army into encampment with silent, brutal efficiency. Harry stood at the head of the table. The others had gathered in stages, Dean Thomas pale and staring, Griphook watching from the shadows with an unreadable expression, Ollivander frail but alert in his chair. Luna had taken a seat beside Azriath and was asking him questions about the abyss with genuine curiosity, which seemed to simultaneously charm and confuse the demon. "Start talking," Bill said. He'd poured himself a fire whiskey and was gripping the glass like it was keeping him tethered to sanity. "After Dumbledore died, I went through the veil in the Department of Mysteries," Harry said. No preamble, no softening. It's not a death gateway. It's a passage to the abyssal realm, a dimension of beings that wizard kind calls demons. I spent a year there. I fought, I learned, I made alliances. And I destroyed 5 of Voldemort's 7 Horcruxes. The silence was total. 5? Bill whispered. How? Abyssal fire. Turns out when you have access to energies that predate creation, a piece of fractured human soul isn't particularly durable. Harry pulled from his belt a pouch and appended it on the table. Objects clattered out, a twisted, blackened ring. A melted lump that had once been a locket. A warped cup with its handles fused shut. A fragment of something that might have been a diadem. And a small, leather-bound book, its pages burned from within, a hole punched clean through its center. The diary, the ring, the locket, the cup, the diadem. Harry pointed to each in turn. Marvolo Gaunt's ring. Slytherin's locket. Hufflepuff's cup. Ravenclaw's diadem. And the diary I already destroyed in second year, but I went back and finished the job properly. There were traces of soul energy still lingering in the remains. You had access to Hufflepuff's cup. Bill was leaning forward now, professional curiosity overriding his shock. That was in the Lestrange vault. How? Griphook helped me plan the break-in. I executed it 3 months ago, spent a day in the mortal world, grabbed the cup, and went back to the abyss to destroy it. Harry nodded to the goblin, who inclined his head in acknowledgement. That's why he's here. I was promised, and received, fair compensation, Griphook said carefully. Potter honors his debts. A rare quality in a wizard. That's why I've been gone a year, Harry continued. I wasn't hiding. I was preparing. Every Horcrux tracked, located, and destroyed, except the snake. Nagini. She's the 6th, and she never leaves Voldemort's side. I need to kill her in person, and then I need to kill him. And the 7th? Bill asked carefully. Harry touched his scar. The old mark, mostly hidden now beneath the sigils. Destroyed months ago. Abyssal cleansing ritual. Ripped the piece of his soul right out of me. He paused, and even now, months later, the memory of that pain made something in his jaw tighten. It wasn't pleasant. But it's done. I'm clean. You had a piece of his soul in you. Dean Thomas looked like he might be sick. Since I was a baby. Dumbledore knew. Harry's voice was flat on that last part. Controlled. He knew, and his plan was for me to die so it would be destroyed. I found a better way. Another silence. Luna reached over and patted Azriatha's arm absently. The demon looked down at her hand with raised eyebrows but didn't pull away. Okay, Bill said slowly. He drained his fire whiskey. Okay. So you have a demon army. You've destroyed 6 of 7 Horcruxes. The last one is the snake. And Voldemort attacks Hogwarts tomorrow. He looked up. How do you know that? Snape's intelligence hasn't mentioned a specific date. Because tonight, I'm going to bait him into it, Harry said. Voldemort has been looking for me, he knows I'm a threat, even if he doesn't know why. All I have to do is let it slip that I've returned to Britain, that I'm heading for Hogwarts. His ego won't let him wait. He's been consolidating power for a year, he thinks he's won, and the idea that I might be regrouping, that I might have something he doesn't know about, will be intolerable to him. You know him that well? Fleur asked. I've spent a year thinking about nothing but how to destroy him. Yes, I know him that well. Harry looked around the room. I need to contact the Order. Kingsley, McGonagall, anyone who can fight. They need to know that when Voldemort comes, they're not alone. The order's been scattered, Bill said. After you disappeared, morale collapsed. They've been running guerrilla operations, protecting Muggleborns, disrupting Death Eater supply lines. But a coordinated defense? He shook his head. Most of them think the war's already lost, Harry. Then they're about to get the surprise of their lives. Asriath set down the teacup with a delicate clink. If I may interject, the element of surprise works both ways. If your allies don't know we're coming, and they see 30,000 demons materialize on the Hogwarts grounds, some of them may react poorly. He's not wrong, Seraphic said from the window. Friendly fire is tedious. I'll go ahead, Harry said. Before the battle. I'll get inside Hogwarts, warn the defenders, and when Voldemort commits his forces, I'll open the gate behind his lines. By the time anyone on our side needs to understand what's happening, the enemy will already be losing. You'll go alone. Into Hogwarts? Bill looked alarmed. I'll take Asriath. He can pass for human if he wants to. Harry looked at the demon. Right? Asriath's form shimmered. The slate skin lightened to a pale human tone, the amber eyes dimmed to a sharp hazel, the claws retracted. He looked like a tall, angular man with high cheekbones and an aristocratic bearing, unusual, certainly, but nothing that would scream demon in a world full of eccentric wizards. Well enough? He asked, examining his now human hands with mild distaste. You look like a posh git, Dean offered weakly. How dare you? I look magnificent. Harry almost laughed. Almost. Good enough. Bill, I need you to get word to Kingsley. Use whatever channels still work. Tell him Harry Potter is back, he has reinforcements, and Hogwarts needs every fighter who can apparate by morning. Don't tell him what the reinforcements are. Let me handle that. Harry, Bill stood, and his expression was complicated. Relief and fear and concern all braided together. You know I trust you. The whole family, we never gave up, never stopped hoping. But this. He gestured toward the window, toward the army that was still settling on his beach like a dark tide. Are you sure you can control them? Harry met his eyes steadily. They're not animals to be controlled, Bill. They're soldiers who chose to follow me. There's a difference. And when the battle's over? They just leave. That's the pact. One battle, then they return to the abyss. Malfoy's word is binding, it's literally written in the fabric of reality. Bill looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded, once. I'll contact Kingsley. Fleur, I am already writing to Gabrielle, Fleur said crisply, quill already in hand. She is with the French resistance. They will want to fight. Good. Harry turned toward the door. I'm going to talk to Kael'thas. We need the staging plan finalized before midnight. He was almost to the door when Luna's voice stopped him. Harry. He turned. She was still sitting at the table, her wide eyes catching the lamplight, and she was smiling, one of her real smiles, the kind that made her look wise instead of strange. They're going to be so happy to see you, she said. Ron and Hermione. They've been fighting so hard, and they never stopped believing you'd come back. Something hot and tight moved through Harry's chest. He nodded. I know. He opened the door. I won't let them down. The night air hit him as he stepped outside, cold with salt spray and the alien heat of a demon army encamped on an English beach. Kael'thas was a dark mountain in the moonlight, moving between formations with surprising grace for his size, adjusting positions, checking equipment. The beach itself was transformed. Where there had been open sand there were now orderly rows of demon soldiers in rest formation, their armor catching stray moonlight and reflecting it back in unfamiliar colors. Harry walked toward his war demon general and let himself feel, for the first time in a year, that this was real. That he was home. that by this time tomorrow, Tom Riddle would be dead. He'd walked into hell a broken, desperate boy with nothing left to lose. He was walking out of it something else entirely. And Voldemort had absolutely no idea what was coming. Midnight found Harry on the clifftop above Shell Cottage, staring north toward Scotland. The army was settled below, a vast dark presence on the beach that made the wards hum nervously. Inside the cottage, Bill was burning through the Order's emergency communication protocols. Already, confirmation was trickling back. Kingsley confirmed, Arthur and Molly confirmed, Remus confirmed. They were coming. Harry reached into his pocket and pulled out a galleon, not a real one. A DA galleon, enchanted by Hermione in their 5th year. He'd kept it all this time. It still worked, he could feel the enchantment's pulse, faint but alive. He pressed his thumb to its surface and sent the message. Just 2 words, encoded into the galleon's serial number in a way that every DA member would recognize: Harry's back. Somewhere out there, in hidden rooms and safe houses and resistance cells across Britain, coins would be burning hot right now. People would be pulling them from pockets and reading those 2 words and feeling either hope or terror or both. Good. He pocketed the coin and turned to find Seraphic standing behind him, her wings out now, catching the wind. She wasn't looking at him, she was looking at the sky, at the stars. Different constellations, she said softly. I've seen so many skies. This one is quite pretty. Enjoy it tonight. Tomorrow it'll be full of fire. That will also be pretty. She glanced at him sidelong. You're thinking about them. Your friends. I haven't seen them in a year. And you're worried they won't understand what you've become. Harry said nothing. Seraphix had an irritating talent for finding thoughts he hadn't acknowledged yet. Let me tell you something, Harry. She turned to face him fully, and for once, there was no mockery in her expression. Just the ancient, patient intelligence of a being who had watched civilizations rise and fall. I have served many masters, or rather, many have attempted to master me. Warlords, sorcerer kings, beings of terrible power. Do you know why you're the first I've followed willingly? My charming personality. Because you never once pretended to be something you're not. Every other mortal who entered the abyss wore a mask, tried to seem crueler, or stronger, or more ruthless than they were. They thought we'd respect a performance. Her black eyes held his. You walked in as yourself. Angry, desperate, grieving, human, and you never once flinched from what you had to do. That's not something you can fake, and it's not something your friends won't recognize. They might not like what I've become. They might not. But they'll know it's still you. The same will that refuse to break in this realm won't be invisible to people who've known you since childhood. She smiled, and it was almost gentle. Go to sleep, Harry. You have a school to save and a dark lord to destroy tomorrow. It would be embarrassing to yawn through his death. Harry snorted. Yes, mother. I am far too young and beautiful to be your mother. I'm more of a dangerously attractive older mentor figure. You're 6,000 years old. And not a day over 5,000 in demonic years. She waved him off. Go. I'll keep watch. Harry went. Back down the cliff path, past the demon encampment where soldiers stood in silent ranks like dark statues, past Caeldats who nodded to him once, past the cottage door where a light still burned in Bill's study. He found the room that had been his before, small, spare, smelling of sea air through an open window. He lay down on the bed in his armor and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would be the longest day of his life. Tomorrow, after a year of preparation, of blood and fire and ancient bargains, he would finally end what began in Godric's Hollow 20 years ago. He thought of Ron and Hermione. Of Neville and Ginny. Of the students huddled in Hogwarts under the Carrow's cruelty, waiting for someone to save them. I'm coming, he thought. Hold on one more night. I'm coming, and I'm bringing hell with me. Sleep took him quickly. Even the nightmares didn't come anymore. He'd faced worse than nightmares in the waking world, and his subconscious had gotten the message. In his dreams, if he dreamed at all, there was only fire and purpose. Dawn came grey and cold, the way English mornings always did, and Harry was on his feet before the first light touched the water. The cottage was already bustling. Fleur had breakfast working through what must have been an extension charm on the kitchen, the smell of eggs and toast and coffee drifting through the small space. Dean Thomas was at the window, still staring at the beach with the glazed expression of a man processing something fundamentally impossible. Luna was outside. Harry could see through the window, walking among the demon ranks with apparent ease, occasionally stopping to examine a particular soldier's armor or weaponry with academic interest. The demons seemed unsure what to make of her, which was a universal reaction to Luna Lovegood. Bill found Harry in the hallway, lines of exhaustion on his scarred face but energy burning in his eyes. Word spread. Kingsley is mobilizing everyone he can. McGonagall's been informed through the Hogwarts Resistance Network, Neville Longbottom's running things inside. She'll be ready. How many fighters? Order members, DA, volunteers, maybe 200. 300 if the message reached everyone. Against Voldemort's full force, that's irrelevant, Harry said. They won't need to hold the line. They just need to protect the students inside the castle while my forces handle everything outside the walls. Bill looked like he wanted to argue, but thought better of it. What about the bait? You said you'd make Voldemort attack today. Already done. Harry held up the DA galleon. Every Death Eater spy and informant in Britain will have heard by now that I sent a message through the old DA network. That I'm heading for Hogwarts. Voldemort will know within hours, if he doesn't know already. And if he waits? Brings forces slowly? He won't. Harry shook his head. He can't. I know him, Bill. He'll hear that I'm back and he'll need to end me personally, immediately. His ego demands it. And he'll bring everything, he'll want to make a statement. The boy who lived, destroyed at his own school, with the whole world watching. The corner of Harry's mouth turned up. He'll get his statement. Just not the one he planned. A crack of apparition outside. Then another. Then 3 more in rapid succession. Harry moved to the window. Figures were appearing on the beach, wizards and witches, wands drawn, staring at the demon army with expressions ranging from confusion to abject terror. He recognized Kingsley Shacklebolt's tall figure, Hestia Jones beside him, Daedalus Diggle with his top hat askew. That's my cue, Harry said. He grabbed a piece of toast from the kitchen on his way out. He opened the front door and stepped into what was about to become a very interesting conversation. Kingsley had his wand trained on the nearest demon formation. His face was a mask of professional calm, but his eyes were wide. When he saw Harry emerge from the cottage, the calm cracked slightly. Harry. Kingsley's deep voice carried across the sand. Bill said you were back. He failed to mention the army of Hellspawn on the beach. Surprise? Harry offered. Kingsley stared at him. Then, very deliberately, he holstered his wand. Inside. Now. You're going to explain this to me before I have a heart attack and leave Voldemort with one less problem. Harry grinned, the first real grin he'd worn in months, and led the way back to the cottage. There was work to do. Plans to finalize. An army to position and a war to win. By nightfall, Hogwarts would be free. By nightfall, Voldemort would be dead. Harry bit into his toast and walked toward the future with 30,000 demons at his back and absolutely no doubt in his heart. Chapter 2, The Return of the Chosen One. Kingsley Shacklebolt had survived 2 wizarding wars, a decade of undercover work, and 3 assassination attempts. He sat at Bill Weasley's kitchen table with his hands wrapped around a mug of tea he hadn't touched and looked at Harry Potter like a man trying to solve an equation that kept changing its variables. Run it by me again, he said. Which part? The part where you went to hell, befriended demons, and are now planning to use them to win a war. It's not hell, Harry said. He was leaning against the counter, arms crossed, watching the Order members who'd filtered in over the last hour. Hestia Jones was at the window, unable to stop staring at the beach. Daedalus Diggle had knocked over his tea twice. Remus Lupin sat in the corner, very still, his amber eyes moving between Harry and the occasional demon visible through the glass. It's the abyssal realm. Different dimension. Think of it like another country, with its own people and its own politics. People. Kingsley's tone was carefully neutral. Beings. Civilizations. The demon thing is just what wizards call them because we ran into a few of the less pleasant ones 1,000 years ago and painted the whole realm with a single brush. Harry shrugged. They're not saints. But they're not what the stories say either. And they follow you. Willingly. I earned it. Kingsley studied him for a long moment. The aura in him was doing calculations, threat assessment, reliability, risk, and Harry let him. He didn't need Kingsley's approval, but he wanted his cooperation. Things would go smoother if the Order and his forces weren't tripping over each other. The Horcruxes, Kingsley said finally. You said 5 are destroyed. 6, counting the one in me. Only Nagini remains. And without the Horcruxes, he's mortal. Kill Nagini, then kill him, and he stays dead. Kingsley sat back in his chair and released a breath that seemed to come from somewhere deep. I've spent a year thinking we were losing this war. That we were just delaying the inevitable. He looked up, and something fierce had kindled behind his professional calm. What do you need from us? Defend the castle from inside. Students are priority, get them evacuated through whatever passage Neville's been using. Anyone who wants to fight, let them fight, but the walls of Hogwarts are the defensive line. My forces handle everything outside. And the demons won't, they have their orders. No friendly kills. They know the difference between a Death Eater and a student. From his corner, Remus finally spoke. His voice was hoarse, a year of hiding and fighting had worn him thin, grayer than Harry remembered, more lined. But his eyes were sharp. Harry. Can we talk? Privately. Harry nodded. He pushed off the counter and followed Remus out the back door, into the small garden behind the cottage where Fleur grew herbs and the wind smelled of thyme and salt. They stood in silence for a moment. Remus was looking at him, really looking, the way he had in 3rd year when he'd first shown Harry the Patronus charm. Like he was trying to see through to something beneath. You look like James, Remus said quietly. But also nothing like him. He never had that look in his eyes. What look? The one that says you've killed things and made peace with it. Harry didn't flinch from that. I have. In the abyss, it was kill or be consumed. I chose to live. I'm not judging you. Remus raised a hand. God knows I'm not. Harry, I've spent a year wondering if you were dead. If I'd lost the last piece of James and Lily that existed in this world. And now you're here and you're. He swallowed. You're 20 years old and you command an army of demons and you look like you haven't been afraid of anything in a long time. 18, Harry corrected. I'm 18. Christ. Remus laughed weakly. 18. I'm still me, Remus. I know. That's what scares me. He reached out and gripped Harry's shoulder, once, firmly. Your mother would be terrified. Your father would be unbearably proud. And Sirius, his voice caught. Sirius would be down on that beach trying to ride one of those wolf things. Harry felt the laugh escape him before he could stop it, real, unexpected, and painful in the way that memories of Sirius always were. Yeah. He would be. I'm with you, Remus said. Whatever happens today. Whatever you've become. You're still the boy I taught to fight Dementors, and I'm still with you. I know. Harry clapped him on the shoulder in return. Now get inside. We need to coordinate the evacuation plan, and you know the castle better than almost anyone. Remus nodded and went back in. Harry stayed for a moment, alone in the garden with the wind. He closed his eyes and breathed. Then a crack of apparition, louder than the others, more desperate, split the air in the front garden. Harry was around the cottage in 3 seconds, wand in hand, and he stopped dead. Ron Weasley stood on the garden path. He was thinner than Harry had ever seen him, wiry, hard, with a new scar running from his temple to his jaw and his red hair grown long enough to tie back. He was wearing what looked like dragon-hide armor over Muggle clothes, and he had his wand out, pointed at the beach, at the army, eyes wild. Beside him, Hermione Granger had her wand out too, her hair pulled back in a severe braid, dark circles under her eyes, and a look of focused intensity that Harry recognized as her pre-battle face. She was thinner too, sharper, a year of guerrilla warfare having carved away anything soft. They were staring at the demons. They hadn't seen him yet. What the fuck, Ron breathed. Bill said Harry was back. He didn't say anything about, what are those, Hermione, what am I looking at? Demons, Hermione whispered. Those are, Ron, those are actual demons, that's not possible, the theoretical literature says. Hi, Harry said. They turned. And the world went still. Ron's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. His wand hand dropped to his side like he'd forgotten he was holding it. Hermione made a sound, small, broken, not quite a word, and her eyes filled with tears. Harry stood there in his black armor with his sigils and his scars and his year of hell written on every line of his body, and he waited. Because this was the moment he'd thought about for 12 months. The moment he'd been afraid of, if he was honest. Not afraid of demons or trials or combat, afraid of this. That they'd look at him and see a stranger. Ron moved first. 3 long strides and he grabbed Harry in a hug that was more collision than embrace, fierce, desperate, his arms crushing tight enough to make the armor creak. You fucking idiot, Ron said into his shoulder, his voice thick. A year. A whole goddamn year. We thought you were dead. We held a memorial. Sorry about that. Sorry, Ron pulled back, hands on Harry's shoulders, and laughed in a way that was half sob. You vanished for a year and came back with a demon army and you're sorry about that? Ron, you're unbelievable. You're absolutely. He hugged him again, briefer this time, then stepped back, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. You look different. Good different or bad different? Terrifying different. Wicked different. Ron was grinning now, watery and disbelieving. Bloody hell, mate. Then Hermione hit him. Not hard, an open palm against his chest, the sound ringing off his armor, and then she was crying and hugging him and hitting him again, all at once, a collision of fury and relief. How could you? We didn't know. I spent months analyzing the Veil's runic structure trying to figure out where you went. The Department of Mysteries has 17 papers on interdimensional barriers and none of them, you couldn't have sent a message. There's no postal service between dimensions, Hermione. Don't you dare be glib with me right now, Harry James Potter. She pulled back and her face was a wreck, tears cutting tracks through what looked like a fine layer of road dust, but her eyes were blazing. A year. We fought for a year without you. Do you have any idea? I know. He caught her hands, stilled them. I know what you went through. I know what it cost. And I'm sorry I couldn't be here. But I'm here now, and I brought enough firepower to end this today. She stared at him. Searched his face. Then her jaw set, that familiar expression that meant Hermione Granger had made a decision and the universe could comply or get out of the way. Fine, she said. Then let's end it. But you're explaining everything after. Every single thing. I want full documentation. Deal. Ron was looking past them toward the beach, where a demon patrol was moving in perfect formation along the waterline. So those are really, and they listen to you? They do. And there's, how many? 30,000. Ron blinked. Blinked again. Then a slow, savage grin spread across his face. 30,000. And you know who doesn't know? He has no idea. Mate. Ron's grin was incandescent. He's going to shit himself. The planning session took 2 hours. They crammed into Bill's kitchen, Harry, his 3 generals, Azriath in human guise, Seraphic still against the wall, Caeldat standing outside the window because he physically could not fit through the door, Kingsley, Remus, Bill, Ron, Hermione, and a handful of other Order members who'd arrived. Harry laid it out simply. The plan was a hammer and anvil. The defenders of Hogwarts were the anvil, holding the castle. The demon army was the hammer, striking from behind once Voldemort fully committed his forces. He'll approach from the Forbidden Forest, Harry said, sketching lines on a conjured map of the Hogwarts grounds. He always uses the forest, cover for his giants and acromantulas, staging ground for his troops. He'll send waves. Inferi first, disposable, meant to tire defenders and test the wards. Then giants and spiders to break the physical defenses. Death Eaters next, mixed with Dementors for psychological warfare. And he'll hold back personally until he thinks the battle's decided. That's when you hit him? Kingsley asked. No. I hit him from the start. Harry tapped the forest on the map. I open the gate here, behind his forces, as soon as the first wave crosses the grounds. Caeldat takes the main body straight into the back of his army. Azriath commands the flanking force, splits left, cuts off retreat, encircles. Seraphic's, aerial superiority, the Demoness said from her wall. Your Dementors, whatever flying assets he has. I'll own the sky. And me, Harry said. I go straight through. To Voldemort. Alone. Ron's voice was sharp. I'll have a personal guard. But yes, the kill is mine. I made a promise to myself and I'm keeping it. Hermione was studying the map with narrowed eyes. What about Nagini? You said she's the last Horcrux. If he sends her away, he won't. She's his protection, his last insurance. He keeps her close, always. If anything, when he feels threatened, he'll pull her closer. Harry's fingers traced the path from the forest to where Voldemort would likely position himself, the high ground overlooking the castle. I kill the snake. Then I kill him. And if something goes wrong? Kingsley's question was practical, not doubtful. If Voldemort finds a way to counter your forces? Azriath spoke from his chair, where he'd been lounging with an air of aristocratic boredom. With respect, and I use that term loosely, there is nothing in your mortal arsenal that can counter 30,000 abyssal soldiers. Your killing curse. Irritating. Your giants. Large targets. Your Dementors. He smiled, showing perfect human teeth that somehow still looked predatory. We eat those for breakfast. Sometimes literally. He's not exaggerating, Harry said. Demonic entities operate on a different magical frequency than anything in our world. Most wizard magic slides off them like water. The killing curse won't work, they're not alive in the way it requires. Transfiguration and conjuration are useless against beings made of abyssal matter. Then what can hurt them? Kingsley asked. Smart question. Always planning for contingencies. Each other. Extremely powerful elemental magic. Fiend fire, maybe. And Voldemort's own power is unusual. Harry paused, choosing his words. He's tapped into things that border on the abyssal. His soul work, the Horcruxes, that's closer to demonic craft than he realizes. If anyone on his side can adapt, it's him. Which is why I need to reach him fast, before he has time to figure out what he's dealing with. Caeldat's voice rumbled through the window like distant artillery. Speed. Overwhelming force. No opportunity for adaptation. Standard doctrine. Exactly. Harry looked around the room. Questions? Hermione raised her hand out of reflex, then lowered it with a self-conscious grimace. The students. Inside Hogwarts. Neville's been running the resistance, how do we coordinate with him? I'm going in early, Harry said. Before the battle starts. Through the passage from the Hog's Head, Aberforth has been keeping that open according to Bill's intelligence. I'll brief Neville and the DA, coordinate the internal defense, and be in position when Voldemort makes his move. I'm going with you, Ron said immediately. So am I, Hermione added. Harry looked at them, his best friends, hardened by a year of war, scarred and serious and absolutely unwilling to let him walk into danger alone. He nodded. Then let's move. We leave for Hogsmeade at sunset. The afternoon passed in organized chaos. Order members continued to arrive. Tonks, her hair cycling through agitated colors, grabbed Remus and then grabbed Harry and didn't let go of either for several minutes. Arthur and Molly Weasley arrived together and Molly took one look at Harry, burst into tears, and hugged him so hard he thought his armor might buckle. Arthur shook his hand with both of his, eyes bright, and asked about 400 questions about demonic metallurgy before Molly pulled him away. The twins arrived in tandem apparition, Fred and George, identical grins that faltered only slightly when they saw the beach. So, Fred said, surveying the demon army with the expression of a man who'd found Christmas morning. When you said you were going to get help, I don't think any of us expected this, George finished. Are any of them, and I realize this is going to sound mad, are any of them interested in product testing? Fred asked. Because our Peruvian instant darkness powder is fundamentally useless against anything that can see in the dark, and I'd love to know if, Fred, Harry said. Later. Right. War first. Market research after. Fred saluted. We brought about 40 DA members. They're staging in Hogsmeade already, Aberforth's pub is standing room only. The wireless network's been spreading the word, George added, his expression sobering. Half of Wizarding Britain knows Harry Potter is back. The other half will know by nightfall. Good, Harry said. Let Voldemort hear it. Let him rush. At 4 in the afternoon, Harry found himself alone with Ron and Hermione for the first time. The three of them sat on the cliff above the beach, the same spot Harry had stood the night before, and for a few minutes, nobody spoke. They just sat, watching the demon army below shift and prepare, watching the sun track west toward the Scottish mountains. Ron broke the silence first. So. A year in Demonland. How bad was it? Harry considered lying. Softening it. Decided against it. These two deserved the truth, and they were strong enough to hear it. The first month, I nearly died every day. Sometimes twice. The abyss doesn't tolerate weakness, it's not cruel about it, not deliberate, it's just, the natural state of things there is lethal to humans. The air, the creatures, the magic. I had to adapt or die. He pulled up his sleeve, showing the sigil work that traced his forearm. These aren't tattoos. They're pacts. Bargains. Each one represents a deal made or a trial survived. They changed me, physically, magically. Made me able to survive there. Hermione was leaning forward, her academic brain clearly warring with her worry. Changed you how? Faster healing. Enhanced senses. The ability to channel abyssal energy, think of it as a parallel magic system. My wand still works, but I can also do this. He raised his right hand and dark fire bloomed in his palm. Not hot in the way fiendfire was hot, cold, ancient, consuming. Hermione flinched back. Ron didn't, but his eyes went wide. Harry closed his fist and the fire vanished. That took me 3 months to learn and I burned my hand off twice in the process. It grew back, he added at their expressions. Abyssal healing. Different rules. You burned your hand off. Hermione's voice was very high. The second time was worse because I was in the middle of a duel and had to finish the fight one-handed. Harry said it matter-of-factly. It was matter-of-fact to him now. Look, I won't pretend it wasn't terrible. It was. But it was necessary. Every day I spent there, I was getting stronger, learning more, building toward this. Every trial brought me closer to what I needed, the power, the allies, the knowledge to end Voldemort for good. Ron was quiet for a moment. Then, the Horcruxes. How'd you find them all? Abyssal tracking magic. Turns out a fragment of a human soul gives off a specific signature, one that's very visible from the demon realm. Once I knew what to look for, I could feel them. Even across dimensional barriers. Harry shook his head. If Dumbledore had known about this, he could have found them in a day. But wizards don't look at the abyss. They're too afraid of it. Can you blame them? Hermione gestured toward the beach. Harry, I'm not, I believe you. I trust you. But you have to understand how this looks from the outside. Demons have been classified as Class 5 threats by every magical government in the world. The historical records were written by wizards who summoned demons through binding circles and tried to enslave them, Harry cut in. Of course those encounters went badly. Imagine if the only thing aliens knew about humans was how we act when someone tries to put us in chains. He shook his head. The abyss has its dangers. It has beings that would consume a human soul without thinking. But it also has honor, and culture, and beings like Azriath and Cael'thas and Seraphix who are more reliable allies than half the wizards I've met. Hermione bit her lip. Processing. Reorganizing her understanding of the world, something she was better at than anyone Harry knew, once she accepted the need. I want to learn more, she said finally. After. Everything you can teach me about the abyssal realm, the magic systems, the cultural structures, I'll tell you everything. But after. After, she agreed. Then, softer, Harry. The thing in your scar. You said it's gone. He touched the mark absently. Gone. Completely. I can think clearly for the first time in my life. I didn't even realize how much noise it was adding until it was silent. His emotions, his thoughts, that constant low-level pressure, all gone. And the connection? You can't see into his mind anymore. No. Harry paused. Which means he can't see into mine either. He has no idea what's coming. For the first time in this war, I'm completely invisible to him. Ron let out a low whistle. That's massive. He always had that edge, knowing where you were, what you felt. Now he's blind. Completely. The three of them sat with that for a moment. The sun was getting lower, painting the sea in shades of bronze and copper. What was the worst part? Ron asked quietly. Of the whole year. Harry thought about it. The trials. The loneliness of the first weeks. The pain of the Horcrux extraction. The duel with Vrethik where he'd been so close to dying that he'd felt the edges of his consciousness start to dissolve. Missing you too, he said. Simple. True. Ron's hand landed on his shoulder, squeezed once. Hermione pressed against his other side, her head finding his shoulder. They sat like that as the sun touched the water, three people who'd been torn apart by war and circumstance and were now sitting on a cliff above an army of nightmares, about to go back to school one last time. Right then, Ron said eventually. Let's go kill the bastard. Sunset. The apparition to Hogsmeade was sharp and cold. Harry landed in the alley behind the Hog's Head with Ron and Hermione flanking him and Azriath a step behind, still wearing his human disguise. The village was dark, no lights in the windows, no one on the streets. Under Voldemort's control for nearly a year now, Hogsmeade had the feel of a place holding its breath. The back door of the Hog's Head opened before Harry could knock. Aberforth Dumbledore's craggy face appeared, blue eyes fierce beneath wild brows. Potter. He looked Harry up and down. You look like hell. Literally, Azriath murmured behind him. Aberforth's eyes moved to the demon in disguise and narrowed. Who's this? A friend. Can we come in? The old man stepped back and they filed inside. The pub was deserted, chairs on tables, dust on everything, the persistent smell of goat and old fire whiskey. But the portrait on the wall was awake, Ariana Dumbledore, forever young, watching them with gentle curiosity. Tunnels still open, Aberforth said, jerking his head toward the portrait. Been sending people through all day. Your lot's been flooding in since this morning, surprised the Carrows haven't noticed yet. Thick as dragon dung, those two. How many inside? 50. 60. Every DA member who could get here. Plus Minerva and the staff, they've been planning something for weeks, just needed a spark. He gave Harry a look that was equal parts grudging respect and irritation. You're the spark, apparently. Apparently. My brother would have had something poetic to say about this moment, Aberforth said. I'll just say, don't die in there. I'm too old to attend another Potter funeral. Wasn't planning on it. Aberforth nodded once, then gestured to the portrait. Ariana smiled, turned, and walked away down a painted corridor. The frame swung open, revealing the tunnel mouth, dark, narrow, sloping upward toward the castle. Harry turned to Azriath. Drop the disguise once we're inside. I want them to see what they're dealing with, but only after I've explained. As you wish. The demon's human face held the faintest hint of anticipation. I haven't infiltrated an enemy fortress in several centuries. How exciting. It's not an enemy fortress. It's my school. Even more exciting. I've never been to school. Ron snorted despite himself. You'd have been a Slytherin. I have no idea what that means, but the tone suggests I should be offended. They entered the tunnel. Harry led, wand lit, moving fast through the narrow passage. It wound upward for what felt like a mile, rough stone, cold air, the smell of earth and old magic. Behind him, Ron's breathing was steady, Hermione's footsteps light, Azriath's nearly silent. The tunnel ended at another portrait, Ariana again, in the room of requirement. Harry could hear voices beyond. Many voices. He looked back at his companions. Ready? Born ready, Ron said. Absolutely terrified, Hermione said honestly. Also ready. Azriath simply bowed his head a fraction. Waiting. Harry pushed the portrait open and stepped through. The room of requirement was unrecognizable. It had transformed itself into something between a barracks and a command center, hammocks strung in rows, a long table covered in maps and notes, supply crates stacked against the walls. And people. Dozens of them, clustered in groups, talking, checking wands, eating from conjured plates. They looked up when the portrait opened. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Harry stood in the entrance, framed by the tunnel behind him, and every eye in the room found him. Then, Harry. The explosion of sound hit him like a physical force. Neville Longbottom reached him first, and Neville had changed as much as any of them. Tall now, broad-shouldered, his face carrying new scars and a hardness that hadn't been there in school. But his grin was the same, wide, disbelieving, incandescent with joy. You're alive, Neville said, grabbing Harry's hand, his shoulder, like he needed to confirm solidity. Merlin's beard, Harry, you're alive. We heard the message on the coins but we thought, we didn't dare, I'm alive, Nevada. Then Ginny was there, shoving through the crowd, and she looked at him with eyes that burned. She didn't hug him, just stood close, studying his face with an intensity that made the air between them feel charged. You look different, she said. I am different. Good. Her chin lifted. We've been holding this school together with spit and spite for a year. The Carrows, they've been torturing students, Harry. First years, for not performing unforgivables on each other. We've been fighting back but, it ends tonight, Harry said. All of it. The room was crowding closer now. Seamus Finnegan, Lavender Brown, the Patil twins, Terry Boot, Michael Corner, Cho Chang, Hannah Abbott, faces Harry knew, faces he'd trained with in the DA 2 years ago, all of them older, harder, marked by a year of resistance. Where have you been? Seamus demanded. A year, Harry. We've been getting our arses kicked, getting help. Harry raised his voice to Carrie. The room quieted, that instinct still there, the DA knew when its leader was speaking. Listen. All of you. Voldemort is coming tonight. He's bringing everything, Death Eaters, Giants, Dementors, the works. He thinks this is his final victory. Murmurs. Fear. Some of the younger faces went pale. He's wrong, Harry said flatly. I didn't spend a year doing nothing. I've been preparing for this, for tonight specifically. I have an army. A real one. 30,000 soldiers who are going to crush his forces like insects. Dead silence now. Complete. 30,000. Neville repeated carefully. They're not human. Harry let that land. They're beings from another dimension, what wizards call demons. I know how that sounds. I know what you've been taught. But they're under my command, they will not harm anyone inside this castle, and they are going to destroy Voldemort's army while we hold the castle and I kill him personally. The silence stretched. People were looking at each other, looking at Harry, trying to process. Demons, Seamus said flatly. Show them, Ron suggested from behind Harry. Harry glanced at Azriath and nodded. The demon dropped his disguise. The transformation was instantaneous, the human features melting away like wax in flame, revealing slate-gray skin, amber eyes that glowed like lanterns, the sharp elegance of a being that was categorically not human. Azriath straightened to his full 7-foot height and regarded the room with polite interest. Wands came up. Dozens of them. Screams, shouts, people scrambling back. Stop. Harry's voice cracked through the panic like a whip. He's with me. Put your wands down. Now. Slowly, unevenly, wands lowered. But the fear in the room was thick enough to taste. Azriath raised one clawed hand in a wave that was almost comically casual. Good evening. I'm told this is a school. Charming. I'm Azriath, one of Harry's generals. Please don't try to curse me, it won't work and it will make things awkward. Harry. Neville's voice was strained. His wand was still half raised. This is, you need to explain. Right now. I went through the veil in the Department of Mysteries, Harry said. It leads to the Abyssal Realm. I spent a year there, fighting, training, making alliances. Azriath and 2 other generals lead the army that's waiting on my command. When Voldemort attacks tonight, I'm opening a gate and they're going to annihilate his forces. And the Horcruxes? Hermione added from beside him, her voice steady and clear. He's destroyed 6 of 7. Voldemort's practically mortal already. One more, the snake, and Harry can kill him for good. That cut through the fear more than anything. The DA had been briefed on Horcruxes, Neville's inner circle, at least. The knowledge that Voldemort's immortality was nearly shattered changed the calculation. You can actually end this, Neville said. Not a question. He was looking at Harry, past the armor, past the sigils, past the demon at his back, and seeing the same person who taught him to cast a Patronus in the room of requirement 3 years ago. Tonight. For real. Tonight. For real. Neville lowered his wand completely. Straightened his spine. Turned to the room. You heard him. Harry's never lied to us and he's never let us down. If he says these, his allies, are here to help, then they're here to help. We have a castle to defend and a war to win. His voice rose, carrying the authority of a year spent leading a resistance. "Die, to your positions. We planned for this. Get the underaged students through the tunnel. Everyone else, battle stations." The room erupted into motion. Controlled, purposeful, Neville had them drilled. People moved to stations, grabbed supplies, checked wands. The fear was still there, but it was transforming, alchemizing into something sharper. Hope. Ginny hadn't moved. She was still looking at Harry. "The demon generals," she said quietly, while chaos organized around them. "You trust them?" "With my life. I've trusted them with it daily for a year. And this army, they're really going to fight for us? For humans. They're fighting for me. Which means they're fighting for everyone I care about." Harry met her eyes. "That includes you. All of you." Something shifted in her expression. Not softening, Ginny Weasley didn't soften, but settling. Deciding. "Right. Then let's make it count." She turned and started issuing orders to a cluster of sixth years near the door, her voice cutting in clear. McGonagall arrived 5 minutes later, sweeping through the portrait hole with the furious efficiency of a woman who'd been waiting for this moment. She took in Harry, took in Azriath, went very still for precisely 2 seconds, and then said, "Mr. Potter. I trust you have a good explanation for the creature standing in my school." "The best, Professor. He's here to help me kill Voldemort." Her lips pressed thin. She looked at Azriath. "Madam," Azriath said, with a slight bow. "A pleasure. Harry speaks highly of you." "Does he?" McGonagall's tone could have frozen lava. Then something shifted, a crack in the iron composure. "Harry. You foolish, brave, impossible boy. Do you truly have a plan?" "I do. And it will work." "It will." She studied him one moment longer. Then she straightened, and she was Professor McGonagall again, the woman who had stared down Umbridge, survived Voldemort's first war, held Hogwarts together through a year of occupation. "Then I suggest we get to work. I'll wake the castle's defenses, the suits of armor, the statues, the wards. Phileas and Pomona are ready. Horace," she paused, "Horace will be useless, but we'll find something for him. Severus, Snape's still here." Harry's voice went flat. "As headmaster. Under Voldemort's orders." McGonagall's expression was complicated. "Harry, there are things about Severus you don't. I know he killed Dumbledore. I know Dumbledore ordered him to do it." Harry watched her surprise. "I learned a lot of things in the Abyss. Dumbledore's curse, the ring Horcrux. He was dying anyway. Snape's been playing double agent the entire time." McGonagall's eyes widened fractionally. "How did you? Soul magic leaves traces. When I destroyed the ring Horcrux, I could read the signatures on it, including the death curse that was eating Dumbledore alive. It wasn't hard to put together after that." Harry shook his head. "I don't trust Snape. But he's not the enemy tonight. If he can get out of Voldemort's inner circle before the battle starts, tell him to run. If he can't, tell him to stay out of my way. I'll pass the message." McGonagall paused at the door. Looked back. "I'm glad you're alive, Potter. Very glad indeed." Then she was gone, robes sweeping behind her, already shouting orders. The next hour was organized mayhem. Harry moved through the castle like a general inspecting fortifications, and that's what he was now, he realized. He checked the wards with Hermione, who'd spent her year learning combat enchantment and could read defensive matrices like sheet music. He positioned DA members at key choke points with Ron, who had developed a tactical mind that surprised no one who knew him but would have stunned the boy who'd struggled with chess metaphors in first year. Ron hadn't just played chess against Death Eaters, he'd been running resistance cells, organizing ambushes, planning retreats. War had honed him. Students flowed through the evacuation tunnel in ordered groups, fourth years and below, anyone who didn't want to fight, those too injured from the Carrow's punishments. Neville coordinated it with the calm efficiency of a man who'd been managing crises for a year. Harry stood at a window in the seventh-floor corridor and looked out over the grounds. Dark now, the last light fading behind the mountains. The Forbidden Forest was a black wall to the south. Somewhere out there, Voldemort was assembling his forces. Harry could feel it, not through the old connection, that was gone, but through a newer sense, an awareness of the void between worlds growing thin, of dark magic concentrating like a storm building. "He's coming," Harry said. Asriath stood beside him, back in his true form, amber eyes fixed on the forest. "I can feel the negative energy mass. Hundreds of death magic users. Several very large biological entities. And those, Soul Eaters you mentioned. Dementors. How many do you feel?" "At least 100 of the Wraith type. Perhaps more concealed by the forest canopy." Asriath tilted his head, eyes narrowing. "There's also something else. Deeper. In the earth beneath the forest. Dead bodies, hundreds of them, animated. Inferi. His cannon fodder. And at the center of it all, him." Asriath's voice dropped lower. "I can feel his soul. What's left of it. Like a broken mirror reflecting all that death energy. He's fascinating. In the way a particularly aggressive cancer is fascinating. He won't be fascinating for much longer." "No," Asriath agreed. "He won't." Harry pulled out his wand and pressed its tip to his forearm, to the largest sigil there, the one that connected him to the gate anchored at Shell Cottage. He could feel the army through it, feel Kael'thas's readiness, Seraphix's anticipation, 30,000 beings coiled and waiting. He sent the signal, "Prepare for transit. Await my mark." The sigil pulsed once in acknowledgement. Harry turned from the window and found Ron and Hermione waiting for him in the corridor. Behind them, Neville, Ginny, Luna, the core of the DA. His friends. His soldiers. His family. "He'll attack within the hour," Harry said. "I can feel his forces massing. Here's how this goes, Neville, you command the internal defense. Every corridor, every entrance, covered. Your job is to make sure not a single Death Eater reaches the students who stayed." "Done," Neville said. "Ron, you're my tactical coordinator. You know this castle better than anyone, you're positioning reserves, managing communications, making sure no one's isolated." Ron nodded sharply. "Hermione, you're on the wards. Keep the castle shields up as long as possible. Every minute they hold is a minute Voldemort's forces are stuck in the open when my army arrives. I'll hold them." No hesitation in her voice. "None at all. Ginny, Luna, you're mobile. Go where you're needed, hit what needs hitting, and for the love of God, don't die." "Wasn't planning on it," Ginny said coolly. "I rarely plan to die," Luna added. "It seems like the sort of thing that just happens." Harry almost smiled. "Asriath stays with me. When the moment comes, I'm opening the gate from the astronomy tower, highest point with clear sightlines. The army needs a visual target for formation deployment." "And then?" Neville asked. "And then I go find Tom Riddle and I end this." The castle shuddered. A low, resonant boom that came from everywhere at once, vibrating through the stones like the whole building had taken a breath. The wards. Something had just hit the wards. Harry moved to the nearest window. The Forbidden Forest was alive, torches, hundreds of them, streaming between the trees. Shapes in the darkness, massive shapes. Giants, maybe 10 of them, lumbering toward the tree line. And in the sky above the forest, a spreading cold, a darkness that had nothing to do with night. Dementors. 100, maybe more, streaming upward like ink dispersing in water. "He's here," Harry said. Another boom. The wards flashed gold, visible for a moment, a dome of protective magic surrounding the castle and grounds. But already, Harry could see them straining, flexing inward like a membrane under pressure. Everyone to positions. Neville's voice boomed down the corridor, magnified by a sonorous charm. This is it. Battle stations. The castle erupted. Footsteps, shouts, the sound of suits of armor animating and marching into position. Somewhere below, McGonagall's voice rang out, and the very walls seemed to respond, stones shifting, staircases reconfiguring, the ancient castle preparing itself for war as it had been built to do. Harry turned to Ron and Hermione one last time. The three of them, together, on the eve of the final battle. Just like it was always supposed to be, except everything was different, and everything was the same. "Don't get killed," Harry said. "Same to you, you dramatic bastard," Ron said, and his voice cracked, and they clasped hands, brief, fierce. Hermione hugged him. Quick, tight, her face pressed against his armored chest for just a second. "End it, Harry. Please." "I will." Then he was running. Through the corridors of Hogwarts, Azriath matching his pace with effortless strides, heading for the astronomy tower. The castle blurred around him, familiar stones, familiar portraits shouting encouragement and warnings, familiar stairs taken three at a time. The wards shattered as he reached the tower's base. The sound was colossal, a crystalline crack that seemed to come from the sky itself, followed by a rush of cold air and a roar from outside. Voldemort's army surging forward. The battle had begun. Harry took the tower stairs at a dead sprint, bursting through the door at the top into the night air. From up here, he could see everything. The grounds of Hogwarts spread below him, and they were swarming. Inferi, hundreds of them, pouring from the forest in a grey-white tide, scrambling over the grass toward the castle walls. Behind them, giants, their clubs raised, roaring. Death Eaters on broomsticks, streaming over the treetops. And above it all, the Dementors, a frozen cloud of misery descending on the castle. From the castle walls, spells erupted, the defenders opening fire, streams of light cutting into the advancing horde. A giant staggered as a dozen stunning spells hit its face. Inferi burned as someone, probably McGonagall, launched a wall of fire across their path. But there were too many. Harry could see it. Without his army, the defenders would hold for minutes, maybe an hour, but they'd be overwhelmed. This was the force of a Dark Lord at the height of his power, everything committed, nothing held back. Good. That's what Harry wanted. Everything committed. No reserves to fall back on when the hammer fell. He raised his hand. The sigil on his arm blazed red gold in the darkness, visible for miles. "Now," he said. The sky behind the forbidden forest split open. The gate tore through reality like a wound, vast, far larger than the one at Shell Cottage, a burning seam in the fabric of the world that stretched 100 meters wide and pulsed with the deep fire of the abyss. Through it poured the army. Cael'thas first, because Cael'thas was always first. The war demon burst through the gate like a siege engine, his 7-foot blade already swinging, and the first giant in his path simply ceased, bisected from shoulder to hip in a single motion that didn't even slow him down. Behind him, the infantry, rank after rank of armored demons flowing through the gate in perfect formation, hitting the back of Voldemort's army like a tidal wave hitting a sandcastle. And from above, Seraphix. Her wings caught the moonlight as she erupted through the gate with 300 aerial demons behind her, launching upward into the sky where the Dementors hung. She hit the first cluster of Soul Eaters without slowing, and they screamed. A sound Harry had never heard a Dementor make. A sound of something that fed on fear suddenly finding out what it was like to feel it. Harry watched the chaos below as Voldemort's army, which had been charging toward the castle in organized assault, suddenly found itself attacked from behind by 30,000 nightmares. It was everything he'd planned. It was beautiful. "Shall we?" Azriath said beside him, his amber eyes reflecting the gate fire. Harry drew his wand. Let the abyssal fire bloom in his other hand, dark, hungry, ready. Let's go kill a Dark Lord. He vaulted over the tower railing and dropped into the battle below. Chapter 3, The Gates of Hogwarts. Harry hit the ground with abyssal energy cushioning his fall, the impact barely registering through his armor as he landed in a crouch on the castle's outer courtyard. Asriath landed beside him, lighter, more graceful, his clawed feet touching stone like he'd simply stepped off a curb. The battle was everywhere. Inferi swarmed the courtyard walls, climbing over each other in mindless waves. Harry swept his left hand out and abyssal fire erupted in an arc, not the thin streams of fiend fire that wizards used, but something deeper, something that consumed on a fundamental level. The inferi it touched didn't burn. They unraveled. Came apart like wet paper, the necromantic energy holding them together dissolving on contact with something infinitely older than Voldemort's borrowed death magic. 30 of them, gone in a gesture. Asriath was already moving, not running but flowing, that liquid demon grace carrying him into a cluster of inferi that had breached the courtyard's lower gate. His claws punched through them like they were made of nothing, each strike precise, economical. He didn't waste motion. 6,000 years of combat distilled into every movement. Left flank, Harry said, not shouting. He didn't need to, the communication sigil on his forearm linked him to his generals. Kale that's, status. The war demon's voice came back through the link, low and measured despite the sounds of carnage in the background. Main force engaged. Their rear guard is collapsing. Giants are targets, we're pulling them down. Harry could see it from the courtyard, looking across the grounds. The demon infantry had crashed into Voldemort's forces from behind with devastating effect. Death Eaters who'd been advancing confidently toward the castle were now turning, panicking, caught between the defenders ahead and the nightmare behind. Giants, those massive, unstoppable siege engines, were being swarmed. One of them toppled as Harry watched, brought down by a dozen demons on its legs, its throat, its arms, pulling it apart with methodical violence. It was carnage. But disciplined carnage. Kale that's wasn't letting his forces scatter, they advanced in formation, tightening like a noose. Seraphics? Harry said. Busy, darling. Her voice was breathless in the way that meant she was moving fast. Your Dementors are, oh, delightful, they're trying to flee. Poor things. They've never been prey before. It's quite the adjustment for them. Harry looked up. The sky was a chaos of dark shapes, Seraphics and her aerial force cutting through the Dementor cloud like hawks through pigeons. The Soul Eaters were indeed fleeing, scattering in all directions, but the demon flyers were faster, more agile, and absolutely relentless. He watched Seraphics herself grab one by what passed for its face and pull, and the Dementor came apart in her hands like tissue, whatever dark energy animated it simply insufficient against a being of the deep abyss. The defenders on the walls had stopped firing. Harry looked up at the battlements and saw them, students, order members, teachers, standing at the parapets with their wands lowered, just watching. The enemy they'd been bracing to die against was being systematically dismantled by something they couldn't comprehend. Don't stop fighting. Harry sent his voice up, amplified with a quick sonorous. Clear the walls. Push anything that gets through back to the grounds. That snapped them out of it. Spells resumed, covering fire, picking off stragglers that made it past the demon lines. Harry saw Ron's red hair on the east battlement, directing fire with sharp gestures, pointing out targets for the defenders. Good. Ron was doing his job. Harry turned south. Toward the forest. Toward where Voldemort would be. Come on, he told Asriath, and they moved. Crossing the Hogwarts grounds during the battle was like running through the end of the world. Harry and Asriath cut a path straight through the chaos, not around it, not avoiding it, through it. Harry's wand worked in concert with his offhand, the holly wood and abyssal fire operating in tandem like two instruments in a symphony. A reductor curse shattered a cluster of acromantulas converging on a demon squad's flank. Abyssal fire consumed a wave of inferi that spilled from a gully. A shield charm deflected a green bolt from a Death Eater who'd spotted him, and Azriath was on the man before Harry's shield even dropped, one clawed hand closing on the man's wand arm and twisting until something audibly cracked. The Death Eater screamed and fell. Azriath stepped over him without breaking stride. Non-lethal? Harry asked, not slowing. He'll live. Probably won't hold a wand again, but that seems like a net positive for your society. They pushed through the battle line, the ragged edge where Voldemort's forces met the demon advance, and into the space beyond. Here, the fighting was less dense. Voldemort's rear elements, the reserves and support forces, were in total disarray. Harry saw Death Eaters operating away, deserting, fleeing the incomprehensible force that had materialized behind them. Smart ones. The stupid ones were trying to fight. A group of 5 Death Eaters converged on Harry as he crossed the lower grounds, organized, experienced, their masks gleaming silver in the gate fire that still burned in the sky. Potter, one of them shouted, the voice familiar, Dolohov. You think your monsters will save you? Avada Kedavra. The green bolt screamed toward Harry. He didn't dodge. Didn't shield. He raised his left hand and caught it, the abyssal energy in his palm absorbing the killing curse like a sponge absorbing water. The green light flickered, dimmed, died in his grip. All 5 Death Eaters froze. That's not possible, someone whispered behind a mask. A lot of things aren't possible until they are. Harry closed his fist, snuffing out the last traces of green. Run. Or don't. I really don't care which. 2 of them ran. 3 of them raised their wands. Harry respected the bravery, in a distant way, even as he moved through them. His wand hand blazed, stupefy, incarcerus, 3 spells in under a second, each hitting its mark. The Death Eaters dropped like puppets with cut strings. He didn't slow down. You absorbed an unforgivable, Azriath noted with academic interest, keeping pace. You couldn't do that 3 months ago. I've been practicing. On what? Things in the abyss that hit harder than a killing curse. Fair point. They crested the hill above the Black Lake. From here, Harry could see the full scope of the battle, the castle behind them, lit with spellfire and the glow of animated suits of armor on the walls. The grounds below, a churning mass of combat where demon forces were systematically rolling up Voldemort's army from south to north. The lake, dark and still, seemingly untouched by the chaos. And ahead, the forest edge. Where Voldemort would be. Harry paused for 1 second. Reached through the communication sigil. Kale that's. Progress. Eastern flank collapsed. Giants are down, 7 of 10 destroyed, 3 retreating. Their spider creatures are routing into the forest. Death Eaters breaking into individual engagements. We are pursuing. A pause. The sound of something massive hitting the ground. 8 of 10. Keep pushing. Drive them toward the forest edge. I want Voldemort's defenses stripped before I reach him. Understood. Seraphix. Sky is ours. Not a single Soul Eater remains in the air, well, not intact ones. Shall I bring my force down to support the ground? No. Stay high. Watch for anything coming from the forest, reinforcements, traps, anything. You're my eyes. As you command, my lord and master. The mockery was fond. There is movement at the forest's heart. A concentration of magical energy, very dense. 5, perhaps 6 powerful signatures surrounding one extraordinary one. Voldemort and his inner circle. Exactly where Harry expected them. How extraordinary? Harry asked. A pause. When Seraphix spoke again, the playfulness had dimmed. Harry. His power signature is, wrong. Like a star that's already dead but doesn't know it yet. Collapsing inward. It's enormous, but unstable. The Horcrux damage, he's barely holding together. Good. That makes what comes next easier. He started down the hill toward the forest. Azriath matched him step for step. The tree line loomed. Dark between the trunks, the sounds of battle growing muffled as the forest canopy swallowed them. But it wasn't quiet, things moved in the undergrowth, fleeing, dying, the remnants of Voldemort's forces scattering through the trees. Harry moved through the forest with purpose, following the pull of dark magic that radiated from the center like heat from a furnace. He could feel Voldemort, not through the old scar connection but through his abyssal senses, the ability to detect concentrated soul damage. It was like following a wound in reality itself, a place where things had been torn that shouldn't have been torn. Azriath moved beside him in silence, his amber eyes cutting through the darkness with ease. Every few moments, he'd tense, a shift in posture, a slight turn of his head, and Harry would see it too. Death Eaters in the trees, broken and fleeing, not even noticing them pass. The battle had already been won out there. This was just the killing floor's edge. They'd gone perhaps half a mile when Azriath stopped. Wait. His voice dropped low. Ahead. A ward line. Clever, layered concealment. Your Dark Lord has created a pocket space within the forest. Harry reached out with his senses. There, a shimmer in the air between two ancient oaks. A Fidelius-like concealment, not quite as strong but broader, hiding a space within the forest from detection. Standard Voldemort, never where you could easily find him, always watching from behind layers. Can you break it? Harry asked. I could. But it would take time and announce our presence. Azriath tilted his head, considering. However, the ward is designed against wizard magic. Against detection spells, revealing charms, your pathetic human scrying. It is not designed against abyssal phasing. So I can walk through it like it isn't there. And where I go, you can follow, the sigil bond extends my immunity to you, within range. Harry didn't hesitate. Do it. Azriath extended one clawed hand and pressed it against the shimmering boundary. His fingers sank through without resistance, the ward magic parting around his abyssal nature like water around oil. He stepped through, and Harry followed, close enough that the sigil bond wrapped him in the same non-interaction field. The ward slid over him like a cold curtain. Then they were through, and the forest opened into a clearing. A command post. Voldemort had built himself a command post in the forest, a raised platform of conjured stone, surrounded by dark-robed figures, with sightlines cut through the trees toward the castle. Viewing magic hung in the air, great floating panels showing different angles of the battle, most of them displaying scenes of complete disaster as demon forces tore through his armies. And there he was. Lord Voldemort stood at the center of the platform, his snake-like face illuminated by the viewing panels, and for the first time in Harry's experience, the Dark Lord looked shaken. Not panicking, Voldemort didn't panic, but his red eyes were wide, his lipless mouth pressed tight, and his posture held the rigid tension of a man whose world was being upended. Around him, his inner circle, Bellatrix Lestrange, pacing like a caged animal, her wild hair wilder than usual. Lucius Malfoy, pale as chalk, his wand gripped in a white-knuckled hand. Yaxley, Rowell, Greyback, 5 of Voldemort's most dangerous, all watching the viewing panels with varying degrees of horror. And at Voldemort's feet, coiled in a massive protective loop, Nagini. The last Horcrux. The snake's great head swayed, tongue tasting the air, her scales catching the magelight. Harry and Azriath stood at the clearing's edge, still undetected, watching. Harry's heart hammered, not with fear but with focus, every sense dialed to maximum, calculating angles and threats and the distance between him and that snake. What is this? Voldemort's voice cut through the clearing, high and cold but threaded with something Harry had never heard in it before. Strain. What are those things? Who commands them? My lord, Lucius said, his voice thin. Our forces are being routed. The giants are destroyed. The Dementors, gone. Whatever those creatures are, I can see what's happening, Lucius. Voldemort's wand hand twitched, and Malfoy flinched back. The question is what they are and where they came from. The gate, Bellatrix said. She'd stopped pacing, was staring at one of the viewing panels, the one showing the burning rift in the sky behind the forest. Something opened a gate. A portal. Those things came through from somewhere else. Another dimension, the legends speak of, I know the legends. Voldemort's voice was silk over razors. Abyssal entities. Demons. Things that wizards stopped trying to summon 1,000 years ago because the cost was unsurvivable. His red eyes narrowed, something clicking behind them. But someone did it. Someone opened that gate and commands those forces. Someone who, he stopped. And Harry watched the realization hit him, watched it move across that inhuman face like a crack spreading through glass. Potter, Voldemort whispered. My lord. Bellatrix turned to him. Potter. The name came out like a curse, like a spell in itself, venom and disbelief compressed into 2 syllables. The boy. He was gone for a year, and now he returns on the same night I attack Hogwarts, with an army from another dimension. His voice rose, thin with rage. He walked into the abyss. He actually walked into the void between worlds and survived. He conquered it. Silence from the inner circle. Nobody seemed to know what to say. My lord, Yaxley said carefully, perhaps we should withdraw. Regroup. If Potter truly commands those forces, withdraw. Voldemort turned on him, and the air temperature in the clearing dropped 10 degrees. I am Lord Voldemort. I do not withdraw. I do not flee from a child, I do not care what creatures he has brought to heal. He raised his wand, and power crackled along its length, visible, raw, the Elder Wand bleeding magic into the air. If his army came through a gate, then that gate can be closed. And without his army, Potter is still just a boy. He's not just a boy, Asriel murmured beside Harry. Not anymore. Harry agreed. But he also respected Voldemort's instinct. The Dark Lord was doing exactly what Harry had feared he might. Adapting. Looking for the strategic solution. Close the gate, cut off the reinforcements, then deal with Potter directly. It was the right play. If Voldemort could actually pull it off. Time to make sure he couldn't. Harry stepped forward into the clearing. He didn't announce himself with a spell or a shout. He just walked out of the shadows, into the magelight, and let them see him. Bellatrix saw him first. Her scream of rage was instantaneous, Potter. And her wand came up firing. 3 curses in quick succession, purple-black, aimed to kill. Harry deflected the first with his wand, absorbed the second with his offhand, and let the third pass an inch from his face because Bellatrix's aim was always slightly off when she was emotional. He didn't stop walking. Hello, Tom, he said. Voldemort turned. And for 1 second, just one, those red eyes went wide. Genuinely wide. Taking in the armor, the sigils, the abyssal fire that licked Harry's left hand without being summoned. Taking in the demon general at his back. Taking in the absolute, fundamental absence of fear. Then the moment passed, and Voldemort's face smoothed into cold fury. Harry Potter. Return from the dead, or from wherever you've been hiding. Not hiding. Training. Harry stopped 20 feet from the platform. Asriel halted at his shoulder, amber eyes fixed on the inner circle with predatory assessment. Hi, Bellatrix. Lucius. You all look terrible. Been a rough year. Kill him. Bellatrix shrieked. My lord, kill him now. Patience, Bella. Voldemort descended 1 step from the platform, the Elder Wand steady in his hand, his red eyes locked on Harry. I want to understand what I'm looking at. The boy who ran from me at every encounter, who survived on luck and his mother's sacrifice and an old man's meddling, now walks into my presence wearing demon sigils and accompanied by one of the abyss's own. A thin smile, like a blade turning. You've been busy. Very. And my Horcruxes. It wasn't a question. You found them. Destroyed them. All but one. Harry's eyes moved to Nagini, then back to Voldemort. But you knew that already, didn't you? You can feel it. The emptiness where they used to be. Voldemort's jaw tightened. A crack in the mask, just for a second. You think destroying a few anchors makes you my equal? You think your borrowed power, there's nothing borrowed about it, Tom. Everything I have, I earned. Harry raised his left hand, and the abyssal fire bloomed brighter, deep, hungry, ancient. You split your soul 7 ways to avoid death. I walked into a realm that would have consumed anyone with less will than me and made it kneel. We're not the same. We were never the same. And after tonight, we'll never be compared again. Voldemort studied him with those red eyes. Reading. Calculating. The Elder Wand held at his side, not raised, not yet. Impressive words, Voldemort said softly. Let us see if your power matches them. He raised the Elder Wand, not at Harry. At the sky. The spell he cast had no incantation Harry recognized. It was something old, something deep, the Elder Wand blazing with a light that was wrong, discordant, and Harry felt the air shift as Voldemort poured power into a working that targeted the gate itself. Trying to close it. Trying to sever the connection between worlds and strand Harry's army. Azriath, Harry started. Already moving. The demon blurred past him, not toward Voldemort but toward the 5 inner circle members, because Bellatrix and Lucius and the others were raising their wands now, all of them, adding their power to Voldemort's working in a synchronized ritual that spoke of practice. Harry couldn't let them complete it. He launched himself at the platform. The first curse came from Yaxley, a Cruciatus, bright red, singing through the air. Harry slid under it, the motion instinctive after a year of dodging things far worse, and his return fire was a concussive blast of abyssal energy that hit the platform's edge and shattered stone in a spray of fragments. Yaxley stumbled back, shielding, his concentration on the gate-closing ritual broken. Azriath hit the right flank like a scalpel. Raoul went down in the first second, not dead, but the demon's clawed hand closed on his wand and snapped it, then sent him tumbling off the platform with a contemptuous shove. Greyback, more beast than wizard, actually lunged at Azriath with his bare hands, snarling. The demon sidestepped with almost lazy grace and drove one knee into the werewolf's chest with a crack of breaking ribs. Disappointing, Azriath said, looking down at the fallen Greyback. I expected more from something with such large teeth. Lucius was backing away, his contribution to the ritual abandoned, his face a mask of terror. He looked at Harry, at Azriath, at the chaos, and made a decision. His wand dropped from his fingers. He raised his hands. I surrender, he said, voice barely audible. Harry didn't have time to deal with surrenders. He pointed his wand at Lucius. Incarcerus. Ropes wrapped the man from shoulder to knee and he fell like a hewn tree. That left Bellatrix and Voldemort. Bellatrix had not stopped channeling. Her eyes were wild, her teeth bared, and she was pouring everything she had into her lord's ritual even as the others fell around her. Mad loyalty, the kind that didn't calculate odds. Harry respected it, in the way you respected a fire. Then he extinguished it. He thrust his left hand forward and a lance of abyssal fire, concentrated, thin as a needle, precise, struck Bellatrix's wand. Not her hand. The wand. It exploded in her grip, vine wood and dragon heartstring coming apart in a shower of splinters, and she screamed. Not in pain but in loss. The sound of a warrior disarmed. Her channeling cut. The gate-closing ritual collapsed. Which left Voldemort. The Dark Lord had felt the ritual fail. Harry saw it in the tightening of his grip on the Elder Wand, the slight shift of his stance from offensive to defensive. But the calculation behind those red eyes was still working, still adapting. "Just us now, Tom," Harry said. "Just us," Voldemort agreed. And he struck. The Elder Wand moved faster than human eyes could track, a sweep, a thrust, a spiral, and 3 killing curses erupted in sequence, fanned out to cut off angles of escape. Voldemort didn't aim at where Harry was. He aimed at where Harry would be. Harry didn't try to dodge. He planted his feet and raised both hands, wand right, abyssal fire left, and met the killing curses head-on. The first he deflected with a shield of compressed abyssal energy, the green bolt ricocheting into the forest canopy. The second he caught in his left palm, absorbing its death energy the way he'd absorbed Dolahov's earlier. The third hit his wand's shield charm and shattered it. The Hollywood screamed in his grip, the phoenix feather core resonating with the twin of its counterpart in the Elder Wand, and the killing curse punched through his defense and grazed his shoulder. Pain. Cold, spreading, wrong. Not lethal, it had only clipped him, but enough to stagger, enough to make his left arm go numb from shoulder to elbow. Voldemort smiled. "Still mortal, then. Still breakable. All your demon tricks and you still bleed. So do you." Harry straightened. Pushed through the numbness. "You just don't remember what it feels like yet." He attacked. Not with finesse, with force. Abyssal fire roared from his left hand in a continuous stream, not aimed at Voldemort but at the ground, the trees, the air around him, creating a cage of consuming flame that forced the Dark Lord to shield rather than attack. Simultaneously, his wand worked, precise, surgical, reductos and bombardas and cutting curses slipping through the gaps in the fire, probing Voldemort's defenses. Voldemort's shield work was extraordinary. The Elder Wand blazed as he deflected, redirected, transfigured, turning Harry's fire into butterflies, his curses into smoke, the air itself into walls of conjured steel. He was fighting at a level beyond anything Harry had seen, the wand amplifying already enormous power to cosmic scales. But he was defensive. For the first time in his life, Lord Voldemort was on the back foot, spending his power to survive rather than to kill. Harry pressed harder. Stepped closer. Let the abyssal fire rage wider, burning through Voldemort's conjured defenses faster than he could replace them. His wand sent blasting curses in sequences of 5, 6, 7, each one from a different angle, exploiting the lag between shield and recast. Voldemort stumbled. Just once. Just half a step. A blasting curse clipped the edge of his robes and he lurched sideways, and for one instant his shield flickered, and Nagini moved. The snake, enormous, 20 feet of lethal muscle, surged forward from where she'd been coiled. Not toward Harry. Toward the forest. Fleeing. Voldemort was sending her away. The last Horcrux, ordered to safety while her master held the line. No. Harry wheeled, tracking the snake. No, Azriath. The demon was already there. He'd finished with Bellatrix, she lay unconscious at the platform's edge, bound and wandless, and his long legs ate the distance between him and the fleeing serpent in 3 strides. Nagini turned on him with shocking speed, jaws wide, fangs dripping venom that hissed against the forest floor. She struck, a blur of scale and muscle aimed at Azriath's throat. He caught her behind the head. One hand, claws digging into the scale just below her skull, and his grip was iron. Nagini thrashed, 15 feet of powerful reptilian body whipping and coiling around his arm, his torso, but Azriath held, amber eyes flat with concentration. "Harry," he said calmly. "Whenever you're ready." Voldemort's shriek of rage was barely human. He turned from Harry, the Elder Wand aimed at Azriath, a killing curse forming. Harry hit him from behind. Not with magic. He crossed the space between them in 2 steps and drove his armored fist into the base of Voldemort's skull. The Dark Lord staggered, his curse going wide, and Harry was on him, wand pressed to his back, left hand clamped on his wand arm. "Stay down." Voldemort twisted like a snake himself, inhumanly flexible, and his free hand caught Harry's face, cold fingers digging in, and Harry felt it. Dark magic. A killing touch. Something Voldemort could channel through his very skin, the concentrated malice of decades of murder flowing through his fingertips. It hurt. Like acid on his soul. Like the Horcrux removal but externalized, trying to burn through his abyssal defenses from the outside. Harry headbutted him. Simple, brutal, his forehead cracking into Voldemort's flat nose with every ounce of force he could muster. The Dark Lord reeled back, his touch broken, dark blood streaming from his face. Harry didn't give him time to recover. He raised his wand and fired, not at Voldemort. At Nagini. Defindo Maxima. The severing charm, enhanced with abyssal energy, blazing white gold, hit the snake just below where Azriath held her. The blade of magic passed through scale and muscle and bone like they were gossamer. Nagini's head separated from her body. The scream that came from Voldemort was nothing human. Nothing of this world. It was the sound of a soul that had been held together by stitches feeling the last stitch snap. He collapsed to his knees, the Elder Wand falling from spasming fingers, his hands clawing at his own chest as if trying to hold himself together. Black mist erupted from the snake's severed neck, the Horcrux fragment, the last piece of Tom Riddle's mutilated soul, shrieking into the night and dissipating like smoke in wind. Azriath dropped the snake's head and stepped back, shaking venom from his forearm. Unpleasant creature. Harry stood over Voldemort. Wand aimed down. Abyssal fire ready in his left hand. The Dark Lord, the most feared wizard of the age, knelt in the dirt at his feet, shaking, weakened, mortal for the first time in decades. "It's done, Tom," Harry said. "No more Horcruxes. No more anchors. You're mortal. You're fragile." Voldemort looked up. And even now, even kneeling, even broken, even with his immortality shattered, those red eyes burned with defiance. His hand shot out, reaching for the fallen Elder Wand. Harry kicked it away. Sent it spinning into the undergrowth. "No," Harry said. "You cannot." Voldemort's voice was ragged, barely there. "I am Lord Voldemort, I cannot die. Everyone dies, Tom. You just made yourself forget." Harry aimed his wand. "Get up." The Dark Lord stared at him. Searching, perhaps, for mercy. Or for weakness. Finding neither. Something shifted behind those red eyes. Not acceptance. Something else. Something worse. Voldemort smiled. "If I die," he said softly, "I'll not die quietly." His hand slammed flat on the ground. No wand. No incantation. Just raw magic, the kind that came from a soul tearing itself apart, from a being with nothing left to lose, channeling every last shred of its power into one final act. The ground beneath Harry's feet pulsed. The air went sideways. And Harry felt it, the fabric between worlds, already weakened by his gate, suddenly being ripped. Not opened with precision and packed. Ripped. Torn. Violated. Voldemort was tearing a hole in reality itself. "What are you doing?" Harry's voice went sharp. He could feel it, the wrongness of it, the desperation of it. Voldemort wasn't opening a gate to the abyss. He was opening a gate to nowhere. To the raw space between dimensions. The void where things lived that even the demons feared. "If I burn," Voldemort hissed, blood streaming from his nose and eyes now as the effort consumed him, "then this world burns with me." The tear widened. The ground cracked. The trees bent toward it, pulled by forces that had nothing to do with wind. From the wound in reality, something looked back. Something vast and hungry and older than the abyss itself. "Harry." Azriath's voice was sharp, genuinely alarmed for the first time since Harry had known him. "He's breaching the primordial void." If that opens fully, I know. Harry looked at Voldemort, kneeling, bleeding from every orifice, burning his own life force to fuel this final spite. This was Tom Riddle in his purest form. If he couldn't rule, he'd destroy. If he couldn't win, no one would. Harry had one chance. He holstered his wand, raised both hands, and poured everything into them. Not abyssal fire. Something deeper. The full force of every pact he'd made, every trial he'd survived, every ounce of power he'd earned in a year of walking through hell. The sigils on his arms blazed, all of them, simultaneously, and the energy that erupted from his hands was neither light nor dark. It was will. Pure, concentrated, focused will given form and substance. He slammed it into the tear. The collision of forces was catastrophic. The ground shattered in a circle around them, trees uprooted, stone pulverized, the clearing blown outward in a radius of destruction. Harry's boots slid in the dirt, the force pushing back against him, and he gritted his teeth and pushed harder. Voldemort screamed. The tear fought. The thing in the void pushed against Harry's seal. And Harry Potter, who had survived a killing curse at 1 year old, who had faced the basilisk at 12, who had outflown a dragon at 14, who had walked into hell at 17 and walked back out commanding its legions, refused to give ground. Close, he said through clenched teeth. Close. The tears snapped shut. The backlash sent Harry to one knee, the air driven from his lungs, black spots dancing in his vision. But when his eyes focused, the void was gone. Reality was sealed. The wrongness fading from the air like a bad dream. Voldemort lay on his back. Still alive, barely. The effort had taken everything from him. His skin was gray, cracked like dry earth, his chest rising and falling in shallow gasps. He looked like what he was, a man who'd shattered his own soul beyond all recovery and burned to shreds in a final, futile spite. Harry stood over him. Raised his wand one last time. Any last words? Harry asked. Not cruelly. Not gently. Just asking. Voldemort's red eyes, fading now, the light in them dying, fixed on Harry's face. His cracked lips moved. I will not be forgotten. No, Harry said. You won't. But not the way you want it. He could have used the killing curse. Could have spoken those 2 words and ended it in the same green flash that had started everything. Poetic. Circular. Harry chose differently. He pressed his wand to Voldemort's chest and released a pulse of abyssal fire, the smallest, most controlled amount he could manage. Not consuming, not destroying. Unraveling. Undoing the dark magic that kept this broken thing alive, untangling the knots of power and hatred and fear that had sustained Tom Riddle past his natural end. Voldemort's body went still. The red faded from his eyes, revealing, for one instant, the dark brown they'd been born as. Tom Riddle's eyes. A human's eyes. Then those eyes closed, and Lord Voldemort died. Not with a bang. Not with an explosion of dark energy or a dramatic dissolution. He simply stopped. The magic that had animated him beyond mortality unwound, and what was left was just a body. Thin, fragile, old beyond its years. Harry stood there, looking down, wand still extended, waiting for something. For some feeling of triumph or completion or relief. It came slowly, not a rush but a rising tide. A loosening of something in his chest that had been tight for so long he'd forgotten what breathing freely felt like. Is it done? Azriath asked quietly. Harry holstered his wand. It's done. The battle was ending. Harry could feel it through the sigils, the demon army's opposition collapsing, Death Eaters surrendering or fleeing in droves, the last pockets of resistance being overwhelmed. Kael'thas reported the eastern grounds fully secured. Seraphix confirmed the sky was clear of hostiles. Harry walked back through the forest toward the castle, Azriath at his side. The sounds of combat faded as they went, replaced by something Harry hadn't heard on a battlefield before. Quiet. The particular quiet that came when one side had been so thoroughly defeated that fighting simply stopped being possible. They emerged from the trees onto the upper grounds. The scene was surreal, demon soldiers in formation on the lawns of Hogwarts, their dark armor gleaming under the stars, standing in disciplined ranks between scattered groups of surrendered Death Eaters. Human defenders on the walls and in the courtyards, wands lowered, staring at their unlikely allies with expressions that ran the full spectrum from terrified to awestruck. Kale that's found them first. The war demon approached with ground-eating strides, his massive sword sheathed across his back, copper eyes assessing Harry for damage. Report, Harry said. Complete victory. Enemy forces destroyed or captured. Casualty count for our side, 11 wounded, none killed. For the defenders inside the castle, 7 wounded, none killed. For the enemy. Kale that's paused. Significant. Several hundred dead. The giants, the undead creatures, the spider things, all eliminated. The wraith creatures, all destroyed. Human enemies, approximately 40 dead, 60 wounded, 30 captured. 7 wounded defenders. 0 dead. Against Voldemort's entire army. Harry closed his eyes for a moment. Breathed. Voldemort? Kale that's asked. Dead. The war demon nodded. Just once. Then, and this might have been Harry's imagination, because Kale that's was not an expressive being, the corners of his mouth turned up a fraction. Good kill, he said. Thank you. Seraphix descended from the sky, her wings catching starlight, landing beside them with a grace that seemed to bend the air. She looked at Harry, looked at the blood on his armor, Voldemort's and his own, and smiled. It's done, then, she said. Not a question. It's done. She looked up at the castle, at its towers and turrets and ancient stone, battered but standing. Not bad, for a mortal war. A bit short for my tastes, but the emotional content was superb. Harry would have replied, but a sound reached him from the castle gates. A sound that built, starting as one voice, then 10, then dozens, then hundreds. Cheering. Ragged, disbelieving, growing stronger. The defenders of Hogwarts realizing, truly realizing, that they'd won. That it was over. That they were alive and the enemy was broken. The castle gates opened, and people poured out. Students, teachers, order members, running across the grounds toward him, toward the demon army, toward the future that had just cracked open. Ron reached him first, sprinting flat out, his face split in a grin that could have lit the entire castle. He grabbed Harry in a hug that lifted him off the ground. You did it, Ron was saying, half laughing, half something else. You mad bastard, you actually did it. Then Hermione was there, and Neville, and Ginny, and Luna, and people Harry hadn't seen in years, and the crowd was pressing in and someone was crying and someone was laughing and the night air smelled like victory and relief and the beginning of something new. Harry stood at the center of it all, his friends around him, his army at his back, his enemy dead in the forest, and let himself feel it. It was over. It was finally over. The demons stood in patient silence behind him, an impossible army on an impossible night, and they waited. Their war was done. Their pact fulfilled. But Harry hadn't dismissed them yet. Not yet. There was still a morning to get through. Still a world to face. Still the question of what came next, what the wizarding world would make of a savior who commanded hell's legions. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, Harry Potter stood victorious on the grounds of Hogwarts, and for the first time in 7 years, the world was free of Lord Voldemort. He looked up at the stars. They were the same stars he'd watched from Gryffindor Tower as a boy. The same sky. The same world. Everything else had changed. Chapter 4, The Halls of the Dead. The Great Hall of Hogwarts had never held a gathering like this. Long tables pushed against the walls, benches filled with wounded and exhausted defenders, house banners hanging limp and dusty overhead. Madame Pomfrey moved between the injured with a focus that bordered on ferocity, her wand trailing healing spells in continuous streams. The house elves had emerged from the kitchens with food and drink, mountains of it, appearing on every available surface, and people were eating with the desperate hunger that came after mortal terror passed. And mixed among them, standing at the edges and filling the doorways and visible through every window, were demons. Harry watched from the head table, not sitting at it, but leaning against its edge, arms crossed, observing. The dynamic in the hall was fascinating. Fear hadn't vanished, not by a long shot. Students gave wide berths to the demon soldiers standing at the entrances. Conversations died when Kael'thas's massive silhouette passed a window. But something else was building too, curiosity, gratitude, the beginning of understanding that these beings had just saved their lives. Luna was responsible for the fastest bridge building. She'd somehow acquired a demon infantryman as a conversation partner and was sitting cross-legged on the floor near the Ravenclaw table, asking it questions about its armor composition with the same tone she might use to discuss Nargles. The demon, a 7-foot creature with insectoid chitin and compound eyes, seemed baffled but was, incredibly, answering her. Ron appeared at Harry's elbow with 2 cups of tea and handed one over without a word. They stood together in companionable silence for a moment, watching the hall. "It's weird," Ron finally said. "Which part?" "All of it. Standing here drinking tea while actual demons guard the doors." He took a sip. "Good weird, though. Alive weird." Harry drank. The tea was too sweet, someone had loaded it with sugar, and it was perfect. "Voldemort," Ron said, quieter now. "He's really dead. Not coming back this time. Really dead. No Horcruxes, no anchors, nothing holding him here. He's gone." Ron's exhale was long and shaky. 17 years. Since before we were born, he's been, this shadow over everything. And now he's just, not. Strange, isn't it? How small the world feels without him in it. Small in a good way. Ron bumped his shoulder against Harry's armored one. In a free way. Hermione found them 10 minutes later, her hair escaping its braid in wild corkscrews, a clipboard in her hands because of course she'd already started organizing things. Her eyes were red-rimmed but her jaw was set with purpose. "Casualty report," she said, "all business. 7 wounded on our side, all minor. Seamus took a bad cutting curse to the leg but Pomfrey's got him sorted. Lavender was hit by a piece of flying masonry but she's conscious and complaining, which is a good sign." She flipped a page. "Death Eater prisoners, 32 in custody. The demon forces are holding them in the courtyard. Kingsley's already processing them for ministry holding." "What ministry?" Ron asked. "The one Kingsley's about to rebuild, presumably." Hermione looked at Harry. "People are already talking about it. What happens next? Who's in charge?" The Voldemort regime had people in every department, Thickness as minister under Imperius, half the Wisengamot bought or blackmailed. "That's not my problem," Harry said. Hermione blinked. "What?" "The political reconstruction. The ministry. That's for people like Kingsley and McGonagall and Arthur. People who know those systems." Harry set his tea down. "I killed Voldemort. I didn't sign up to run the government." "People are going to want you to," Hermione said carefully. "Harry, you just ended the war in a single night with an army of demons. The wizarding world is going to look at you and see, a conqueror." Harry's mouth twisted. "A new Dark Lord? A threat?" "A leader," Hermione corrected. "But also, yes. Some of them will see a threat." Harry looked out across the great hall. At the students eating and crying and hugging each other. At the demons standing silent guard. At the world that had just changed irrevocably and didn't know yet what shape it would take. Let them, he said. I'll deal with it tomorrow. Right now, I have a pact to honor. He pushed off the table and headed for the doors. Ron and Hermione exchanged a look and followed. Outside, the grounds of Hogwarts were transformed. The demon army stood in formation on the lawns, orderly, patient, 30,000 beings waiting in disciplined silence under the stars. The damage from the battle was everywhere, craters in the earth, scorched grass, the remains of giants and acromantulas scattered across the lower fields, but the demons themselves were pristine, already reformed into their marching ranks. Caeldaths met Harry at the castle doors. The war demon had a new scratch on his armor, a single mark, running diagonally across his chest plate, and Harry wondered what had managed to land a hit on him. Your forces are assembled, Caeldaths said. The pact's conditions are fulfilled. One battle. The enemy is Ash. Not quite Ash, Asriath murmured, appearing from somewhere. More of a pathetic corpse in a clearing. But the spirit of the pact is satisfied. Harry nodded. He'd known this moment was coming, had planned for it, accepted it. The army was never his to keep. One battle. That was the deal. But he wasn't ready for the feeling that came with it. These beings had followed him. Fought for him. Some of them, Asriath, Seraphix, Caeldaths, had become something closer to friends than he'd expected. Allies forged in the particular fire of the abyss, where trust had to be earned with blood. He walked out onto the lawn, his generals flanking him, and faced the assembled legions. 30,000 faces, if they could all be called faces, turned toward him. Silent. Waiting. Harry had never been good at speeches. In the DA, he'd led by example. In the abyss, he'd led by will. But this moment deserved words. You fought well tonight, he said, his voice carrying through the sigil link to every soldier in the formation. You followed me into a world that wasn't yours, against an enemy that wasn't your concern, and you broke him completely. I won't forget it. The abyss won't forget it. Silence. But a different kind now, attentive, receptive. The pact is fulfilled. Your service is honored. You return to your realm with the gratitude of a world that doesn't even know how to thank you yet. He paused. But they'll learn. Caeldaths raised one massive fist. A salute, the demon army's acknowledgement of a commander's words. 30,000 fists rose in unison. The sound of it, armored hands beating once against armored chests, rolled across the grounds like thunder. Then it was done. Caeldaths turned to the army and issued a single command in the guttural language of the abyss, and the legions began to move. Not running, marching. Orderly, disciplined, flowing toward the gate that still hung in the sky above the forest, now pulsing with the call to return. Harry watched them go. Rank after rank, disappearing through the burning seam in reality, returning to the dimension they'd come from. It took nearly 20 minutes for 30,000 soldiers to pass through, but not one broke formation, not one lingered. When the last infantryman vanished through the gate, only 3 demons remained on the grounds of Hogwarts. Asriath, Seraphix, and Caeldaths. You're still here, Harry said. The army's pact is fulfilled, Asriath said, examining his claws with studied nonchalance. Our pact is different. Personal allegiance, not military contract. We stay as long as we choose. Harry looked at him. You want to stay? Want is a strong word. Let's say I'm not yet bored with this dimension. Those amber eyes flickered with something that wasn't quite humor. Besides, you've just won a war. The interesting part is what comes after. I wouldn't miss it. Seraphix stretched her wings in the night air, the stained glass panels catching starlight. I haven't been to the mortal world in 4,000 years. I'd like to look around before I go back to the eternal tedium of abyssal politics. She smiled at Harry. If you'll have me. Harry looked at Caeldaths. The war demon stood with his arms crossed, silent as ever, but he didn't move toward the gate. Didn't even glance at it. "Kale, that's where you go," the war demon said simply. "I go." Something warm settled in Harry's chest. Not the fierce heat of battle, something quieter. The knowledge that he wasn't alone. That the bonds he'd forged in the abyss weren't transactional, they were real. "All right," he said. "Stay." Above them, the gate pulsed once more, acknowledging the choice, and then slowly, like a wound healing, it closed. The burning seam narrowed, dimmed, and sealed. Reality smoothed over the place where it had been. The sky above Hogwarts was just sky again. Stars. Silence. Peace. And 3 demons who had chosen a human over their own realm, standing on a school lawn in Scotland, looking at Harry Potter like he was worth following. The next hours blurred. Harry moved through them on the fading edge of adrenaline, handling each new demand as it came. Kingsley needed him. The Order needed to debrief. The captured Death Eaters needed processing. The Ministry, what remained of it, needed to be contacted and informed that the war was over. Harry dealt with what he could and delegated the rest. He was not a politician and had no interest in becoming one, but he understood that the transition from war to peace required his presence. He was the symbol, whether he liked it or not. The man who'd ended it. It was past 3 in the morning when he finally sat down. The room of requirement had reformed itself into something quieter, comfortable couches, a low fire, soft light. His inner circle had gathered naturally, Ron and Hermione, Neville and Ginny and Luna, and his 3 demon generals who occupied one end of the room with varying degrees of comfort. Azriath had found a chaise lounge and was draped across it with feline grace, still in his true form, his slate-gray skin catching the firelight. Seraphix sat on the floor near the fire with her wings folded behind her, looking more relaxed than Harry had ever seen her. Kale that stood by the wall, he always stood, his copper eyes half-lidded but alert. The humans occupied the other end. Not avoiding the demons exactly, but maintaining a respectful distance. Except Luna, who was sitting on the floor near Seraphix and seemed to be showing her something in a book. "So," Neville said. He was sprawled in an armchair, exhaustion written into every line of his body, but his eyes were clear. Alert. The eyes of a resistance leader who'd earned his rest. "We won." "We won," Harry confirmed. "And those 3 are staying." Neville nodded toward the generals. "For now." Neville digested that. Nodded slowly. "Right. Okay. Demons living in Britain. That's new." "You get used to it," Harry said. "Do you?" "Because Seraphix just winked at me and I think my heart actually stopped." "She does that. Don't take it personally, or do. She finds it amusing either way." Ginny was sitting on the arm of a couch, her legs drawn up, her eyes fixed on Harry with that measuring look she'd had all night. She'd been quiet through most of the post-battle chaos, helping where needed, directing younger students, but always watching Harry. Watching how he moved, who he spoke to, how he commanded. "You're different," she said now, into a lull in conversation. Not accusatory. Observational. "I know. Not in a bad way. Just, you used to second-guess yourself. Used to agonize over decisions. Now you just, decide. A year in a dimension where hesitation gets you killed will do that. Is that all it is? Survival instinct?" Harry considered. "No. It's also, I stopped being afraid of being wrong. In the abyss, you make the best choice you can with what you have, and then you commit to it. You don't have the luxury of doubt. And somewhere along the way, that stopped being survival and started being, how I am." Ginny nodded. Seemed satisfied with that. Good. The old Harry was lovable but frustrating. This one's more, complete. Thanks. I think. Ron had his head back on the couch, eyes closed, but he wasn't sleeping. What happens now? Big picture. The ministry's in shambles, half the Wisengamot's compromised, Azkaban's probably empty since the Dementors are all dead. Kingsley takes over as interim minister, Hermione said immediately. He has the authority, the respect, and the competence. The Wisengamot gets purged, anyone under Imperius gets cleared, anyone who served willingly gets tried. New elections within 6 months. She'd clearly been thinking about this for a while. And Harry? Ginny asked. What about me? You just won a war with a demon army. People are going to have opinions about that. Some of them are going to be very loud opinions. Let them opine, Harry said. He didn't feel concerned about it. Maybe he should have. But after facing down beings that could unmake reality, the prospect of angry op-eds in the Daily Prophet seemed profoundly unimportant. I'm not hiding what I did or what I am. If people have questions, I'll answer them. If they have problems, he shrugged. They can have problems. And if the ministry decides a wizard who commands demons is a threat to national security? Hermione asked carefully. Then the ministry can come talk to me about it. Harry's voice was level. I'm not going to be managed or controlled, Hermione. Not by the ministry, not by anyone. I spent 17 years letting other people decide what I should be, Dumbledore, Voldemort, the Prophet, the public. That's done. Asriatha's dry voice drifted from his chaise lounge. I believe the correct human phrase is, around and find out. Ron snorted. Neville choked on his drink. Even Hermione's lips twitched. What he said, Harry agreed. Dawn came slowly, grey light filtering through the room of requirements conjured windows. Most of them had fallen asleep where they sat, Ron sprawled across a couch, Hermione curled in an armchair with a quilt someone had transfigured, Neville and Ginny both out cold in separate corners. Luna was asleep on the floor next to Seraphix, which was either deeply trusting or deeply insane. The Demoness hadn't moved all night, sitting vigil with her wings half spread over the sleeping girl like a dark canopy. Harry hadn't slept. He'd tried, but his body was still thrumming with the residual energy of the battle, of Voldemort's death, of the gate working and the void ceiling. He'd spent the dark hours sitting by the window, watching the grounds lighten, thinking. Asriath appeared beside him at some point, silent, as always when he chose to be. The demon's amber eyes reflected the growing dawn. You're brooding, Asriath observed. Thinking. In humans, that's the same thing. He leaned against the window frame, arms crossed. What's troubling you? You won. Decisively. Your enemy is dead, your friends are safe, your world is free. By any metric, this is the optimal outcome. It is. Harry watched 2 figures moving across the distant grounds, early risers, checking the damage, taking stock. But you heard what they said in there. What comes next? The politics, the reconstruction, the questions about me and what I did. This world isn't going to just accept what happened and move on. No world does. Victory creates a vacuum. Nature abhors vacuums. Asriath tilted his head. You're not worried about it, though. You're worried about something else. Harry was quiet for a moment. Then, the void. What Voldemort tried to open. The thing that was looking back. Asriath went still. His amber eyes dimmed slightly, the demon equivalent of a flinch. Yes, he said carefully. I noticed you hadn't brought it up. I sealed it. Closed the breach. But you felt it, whatever was on the other side. It saw us, Asriath. It saw this world. It did. And Malfoy said the veil between realms would thin. That other things might slip through. Harry turned to face his general. Is this a problem? A real one? Asriath was quiet for longer than Harry liked. The demon who always had a sardonic reply, always had a dismissive quip, silent. Considering. The primordial void, he finally said, is not like the abyss. We, the beings you call demons, we are ordered. We have form, structure, civilization. The void is what existed before form. Before structure. The things that live there, if live is even the right word, they don't think the way we do. They don't want things the way we do. They simply consume. Expand. Unmake. And now they know we're here. They always knew. The void is aware of everything, in its way. But there's a difference between knowing and noticing. Voldemort's breach, your sealing of it, that was loud. In cosmic terms, it was a shout in a quiet room. Azriath met his eyes. Will something come? Perhaps. Perhaps not. The void moves on timescales that make even demons feel young. It could be tomorrow. It could be 10,000 years. That's not reassuring. It wasn't meant to be. It was meant to be honest. Azriatha's expression softened, barely, just a fraction. But Harry, you sealed a void breach with raw will. No ritual, no preparation, no assistance. That's not something I've seen done in my 6,000 years. Whatever comes, if anything comes, you'll face it with the same will that carried you through the abyss and through tonight. Harry absorbed that. Filed it away. A future concern, real, but not immediate. Not today's battle. For now, he said, we deal with what's in front of us. Wise. Also exhausting. Azriath yawned, an impressive display of teeth. I'm going to find somewhere dark and quiet and sleep for approximately 12 hours. Even ancient beings get tired after interdimensional warfare. There are dungeons, Harry offered. How charming. A school with dungeons. You humans are delightful. Azriath unfolded himself from the window and padded toward the door, pausing to step carefully over Luna's sleeping form. Seraphix watched him go with one open eye, then returned to her vigil over the sleeping girl. Harry turned back to the window. The sun was rising properly now, golden light spilling across the grounds, illuminating the damage and the beauty in equal measure. Hogwarts stood. Battered, scarred, but standing. The same stones that had sheltered him as a child still held. He'd saved it. Not with love and sacrifice and noble self-destruction, the way Dumbledore had wanted. With power and fury and alliances forged in darkness. And the castle still stood. The people inside still breathed. In the end, that was what mattered. Not how the victory was won, but that it was won. By mid-morning, the castle was fully awake and buzzing with activity. The atmosphere was bizarre, half celebration, half shock, with the constant underlying strangeness of three demons moving freely through the corridors. Harry found himself in the headmaster's office, Snape's office, technically, though the man himself was conspicuously absent. McGonagall had mentioned he'd disappeared during the battle, slipping away when the demon army appeared. Smart of him. Harry had meant what he said, Snape wasn't his enemy, but he wasn't ready for that conversation yet. Dumbledore's portrait was awake behind the desk. Those painted blue eyes twinkling, that knowing expression that Harry had once found comforting and now found complicated. Harry, my boy, the portrait said warmly. I cannot express how relieved I am. You did it. You ended Tom's reign. I did. Harry sat in the chair across from the desk, not behind it, and looked at the painting. Not the way you planned, though. A pause. The portrait's expression shifted, still kind, but something careful behind it. No. Not the way I had envisioned. I confess, the demons were not among the scenarios I had considered. You considered the one where I died. No point dancing around it. Harry's voice wasn't angry. Just flat. Stating a fact. Dumbledore's portrait was quiet for a long moment. The other paintings on the walls pretended to be asleep, poorly. I did, Dumbledore said finally. I considered it because I believed it to be necessary. The Horcrux in your scar, I saw no other way to destroy it without destroying you. You didn't look hard enough. Perhaps not. And to the portrait's credit, there was genuine regret there. Genuine humility. Perhaps I was so fixed on the path I saw that I failed to imagine others. That has always been my weakness, Harry. Seeing the pieces of the board so clearly that I forget the pieces can move themselves. I'm not a piece. No. You never were. I told myself you were a soldier, my soldier, fate's soldier, because it was easier than acknowledging you as what you actually are. The portrait's eyes held his. A force. Unto yourself. Harry sat with that. The anger he'd carried about Dumbledore's plans, about the calculated grooming, the careful preparation for sacrifice, had burned down to embers during his year in the abyss. It was hard to stay furious at a dead man. Especially one whose portrait seemed genuinely capable of admitting fault. I forgive you, Harry said. Not because you deserve it. Because carrying it is pointless. He stood. But I want you to know, if you told me. If you'd been honest about the Horcrux, about your plan, about all of it, I would have found another way then, too. You didn't have to manage me. You just had to trust me. I know, the portrait said softly. I know that now. Harry nodded once and turned to leave. At the door, he paused. The Elder Wand. It's in the forest somewhere. What should I do with it? Destroy it, Dumbledore said without hesitation. It has caused enough harm across the centuries. Let it end. Agreed. Harry opened the door. Goodbye, Professor. Goodbye, Harry. And, I am proud of you. For whatever that is worth. Harry didn't answer. He closed the door behind him and walked down the spiral staircase, past the gargoyle, and back into the corridor where the living waited. He found the Elder Wand an hour later, half buried in the undergrowth of the forest clearing where Voldemort had died. The clearing itself was a ruin. The blast from their final exchange had flattened trees in a 30-meter radius, cratered the earth, left the air smelling of ozone and something deeper. Voldemort's body was gone. Kingsley had already ordered it removed and secured. The remains of the battle, shattered wands, scraps of robes, Nagini's headless corpse, littered the ground. Harry picked up the Elder Wand. It hummed in his hand. Recognized him, the winner, the master, the one who disarmed its previous owner and then killed him. The Death Stick. The Wand of Destiny. 15 inches of elder wood and thestral hair, containing more raw power than any other wand ever crafted. He could feel it offering itself to him. Use me, it seemed to say. I am yours by right of conquest. I am power without limit. Harry held it for a moment. Felt its potential. Then he set it on a flat stone in the clearing and pointed his holly wand at it. Reducto. The Elder Wand shattered. It didn't go quietly, a flash of white light, a sound like a bell cracking, a surge of released power that made the air taste of static for several seconds. Then it was done. Splinters of elder wood on stone. Thestral hair dissolving into nothing. The most powerful wand in history, reduced to fragments. Harry felt nothing but relief. Dramatic, Seraphic said from behind him. He hadn't heard her arrive, she moved like thought when she wanted to. Was that significant? Very. That was the most powerful magical weapon in our world. And you destroyed it. It was more trouble than it was worth. She moved to stand beside him, looking down at the fragments. Her black eyes reflected the morning light. You fascinate me, Harry Potter. Most beings, mortal or otherwise, accumulate power. Hoard it. You just destroyed a weapon of ultimate potential because it was inconvenient. Not inconvenient. Dangerous. To whoever held it and everyone around them. Every master of that wand was murdered for it, eventually. The cycle needed to end. And you don't want ultimate power? She was watching him with something between curiosity and, Harry wasn't sure. Admiration, maybe. Or confusion. I have enough power. He holstered his own wand, the holly and phoenix feather, his since he was 11, the only wand he'd ever needed. More than enough. The Elder Wand was a crutch for people who couldn't generate their own strength. I don't need crutches. Seraphix smiled. It was different from her usual smiles, no predation in it, no mockery. Just warmth. This is why we follow you, you know. Not the power. Not the will. The wisdom to know what to do with both. Don't go getting sentimental on me. Perish the thought. She stretched her wings, the morning sun catching their violet panels. Come. Your friends are looking for you. Something about journalists arriving in Kingsley wanting you to make a statement. Harry grimaced. Already? The word is out, apparently. Your wizarding newspapers are quite excited. Something about demons and Voldemort's death and, what was the phrase, the savior returns. She said it with the mild distaste of someone quoting a bad headline. Wonderful. I could eat the journalists, if you prefer. Tempting. But no. You never let me have any fun. They walked back toward the castle together, the Demoness and the wizard, through forests that no longer held any darkness Harry feared. The morning was bright. The world was changed. And somewhere behind them, the fragments of the Elder Wand lay forgotten on stone, their power already fading to nothing. The press conference, if it could be called that, happened on the front steps of Hogwarts at noon. Kingsley had organized it with the efficiency of a man who understood that controlling the narrative was as important as winning the war. Reporters from the Prophet, the Quibbler, the wireless networks, and half a dozen international outlets had descended on Hogsmeade within hours of the news breaking. They'd been corralled on the front lawns, kept at a respectable distance by order members, and were now a sea of quick quotes, quills and flashing cameras. Harry stood on the steps with Kingsley on one side and McGonagall on the other. Behind him, and he'd insisted on this, Asriath, Seraphix, and Caeldat stood in clear view. He wasn't going to hide them. Wasn't going to minimize what had happened or how. The reaction from the press corps when the three demons took their positions was gratifying in a chaotic sort of way. Several reporters dropped their quills. One fainted. A photographer's camera exploded, likely from the magical interference Caeldat's presence generated. Kingsley stepped forward first, his deep voice carrying across the lawn with natural authority. At approximately 10 p.m. last night, Lord Voldemort launched a full-scale assault on Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry with the intent of murdering its defenders and consolidating his control over magical Britain. He failed. His forces were destroyed. He is dead. The war is over. The eruption of questions was immediate and deafening. Kingsley raised a hand. Silence fell, not because he shouted but because his presence demanded it. I will now yield to Harry Potter, who will provide details on how this victory was achieved. Harry stepped forward. The cameras went insane. He looked out at them, the reporters, the photographers, the public watching through magical mirrors and wireless connections across Britain. Thousands of eyes. Millions, maybe, once the international press distributed. I'll keep this short, Harry said. His voice carried without amplification, a trick of abyssal projection, learned from beings who commanded armies without needing to shout. A year ago, I left Britain to find a way to end Voldemort permanently. I traveled to the abyssal realm, what most wizards know as the demon dimension, and spent 12 months there. I forged alliances with its inhabitants, destroyed 6 of Voldemort's 7 Horcruxes using abyssal methods, and returned with military forces sufficient to guarantee victory. He paused. Let that settle. The beings behind me are my generals. Asriath, Seraphix, and Caeldat. They and their forces fought beside the defenders of Hogwarts last night and were instrumental in the destruction of Voldemort's army. They are not threats. They are not invaders. They are allies who honored a pact and served with distinction. Mr. Potter. A reporter's voice cut through, Rita Skeeter, her acid green quill already scribbling. Are you telling the wizarding world that you willingly entered a dimension of dark creatures and made deals with demons? Are you aware that the International Confederation classifies? I'm aware of what the Confederation classifies, Harry said. I'm also aware that without those dark creatures, every person inside this castle would be dead and Voldemort would rule Britain. Classifications can be updated. But the precedent is that rigid thinking and fearful ignorance almost lost us this war. Voldemort won for a year because the wizarding world was too afraid to fight differently. Harry's voice hardened slightly. I wasn't afraid. And everyone in this castle is alive because of it. Silence. The quills scratched frantically, but the reporters themselves had gone quiet. I'll take 3 more questions, Harry said. A young reporter near the front, not one Harry recognized, raised his hand. Mr. Potter, the Demon Army. You said they honored a pact. Does that mean they've left? Are they gone? The army has returned to the Abyssal Realm, yes. My 3 generals have chosen to remain in this world for the time being. They're guests, allies, and I expect them to be treated with the same courtesy as any other sentient being. Murmuring. Uneasy, but not hostile. Another question, an older witch from what looked like an international outlet. Mr. Potter, what are your intentions now? You command power that, with respect, exceeds anything in the modern wizarding world. What do you plan to do with it? Harry met her eyes. Live. Help rebuild where I can. I didn't fight this war to become a dictator. I fought it to end one. He looked out across the gathered crowd. I'm not interested in ruling anything. I'm interested in making sure no one has to live in fear again, not from dark lords, not from their own government, not from ignorance. How I do that, well. I'll figure it out as I go. He took one more question, something about the Horcruxes that he answered briefly, and then stepped back. Kingsley took over again, smoothly transitioning into details about the interim government, the reconstruction plan, the trials for captured Death Eaters. Harry retreated into the castle. Enough. He'd shown his face, told the truth, established his position. The rest was politics. Late afternoon found him on the grounds again, near the lake, in a spot that had once been his favorite when the world was simpler. The water was still and dark, the giant squid occasionally rippling the surface, the mountains blue-gray in the distance. Neville found him there. The 2 of them sat on the bank in silence for a while. Neville had changed out of his battle-worn clothes into something cleaner, but the scars were still there, the year of resistance written on his body. He looked older than 19. They all did. I wanted to thank you, Neville said eventually. For what? For coming back. For finishing it. Neville pulled a blade of grass and turned it between his fingers. We were holding, the DA, the resistance, we were holding, but we were losing. Slowly. The Carrows broke people down, week by week. Students giving up, going quiet, stopping fighting. Another few months end. He didn't finish. You held, Harry said. A year. Against Death Eaters running the school, against torture and punishment, with no idea if help was coming. That's not losing, Neville. That's the definition of winning the hard way. It didn't feel like winning. It never does, while you're in it. Neville nodded slowly. The demons. I want to understand them better. Not from fear, just because they're there, you know. They're part of this now. Part of your story, which means part of ours. I'll introduce you properly. When things calm down. Azriath would like you, he respects stubborn people. Is that a compliment? From him, the highest possible. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun tracked lower. Students were moving around the grounds now, some repairing damage, others just walking, processing, being alive. A few waved at Harry from a distance. He waved back. Harry. Neville's voice had changed, quieter, more serious. The Carrows. Alecto and Amicus. They fled during the battle. They're not among the prisoners. Harry went still. You're sure? I checked every face personally. They're gone. Neville's jaw was tight. They spent a year torturing children, Harry. First years. They made students practice cruciatus on each other. He stopped. Breathed. I want them found. They'll be found. I want to be there when they are. Harry looked at Neville, at the steel in his eyes, at the set of his shoulders. This wasn't the round-faced boy who'd been afraid of Snape. This was the man who'd led a resistance, who'd been crucioed repeatedly and gotten back up every time, who'd kept fighting when fighting seemed pointless. You'll be there, Harry said. I'll make sure of it. Thank you. They sat until the sun touched the mountains. Then they went back inside, back to the living, back to the endless work of rebuilding. Night fell on a free Hogwarts for the first time in a year. Harry stood on the astronomy tower, the same tower where Dumbledore had died, where Snape had cast the killing curse that set everything in motion. The irony wasn't lost on him. Full circle, almost. He'd opened his gate from here, launched his war from this spot. Now he stood here in the quiet aftermath, watching lights come on across the castle. Asriath materialized from the shadows, properly this time, his slate-gray form distinct against the night sky. He moved to the railing and stood beside Harry, looking out. Your world is pretty at night, the demon said. All those little lights. In the abyss, we don't have that, everything either glows perpetually or is in absolute darkness. The contrast here, light and dark, day and night, it's rather charming. Getting sentimental? Absolutely not. Making aesthetic observations. He paused. The political creature, Kingsley, is doing well. He's already established transitional authority. Your people are surprisingly organized when someone competent takes charge. We're not all idiots. No. Just most of you. Asriatha's amber eyes cut sideways. Harry. There's something I want to discuss. Not urgently, but, it bears mentioning. The void. Not the void. Something more immediate. He straightened slightly. My presence here, mine, Seraphix's, Kael'thas's, it will have effects. The veil is thinner now, as Malfoy's warned. Other things may notice. Not void entities, lesser concerns, but real ones. Abyssal fauna, creatures from the edges of our realm that are less civilized than us. They may be drawn to the thinning. May slip through. You're saying there might be incidents. I'm saying that the consequence of what you did tonight, opening the gate, letting 30,000 demons walk the earth, won't end cleanly. There will be aftershocks. Small ones, likely. Creatures in your forests, unexplained phenomena, magical disturbances in places where the veil was already weak. Like the Department of Mysteries. Precisely. Your people will need to learn how to deal with abyssal intrusions, minor ones, likely nothing beyond what a competent wizard could handle, but unfamiliar. New. Harry absorbed this. Not with alarm, he'd expected consequences. Malfoy's had warned him. The question was whether the cost was worth the price. He looked down at the grounds. At the castle, whole and lit and alive. At the students moving safely behind its windows. At the world that Voldemort would have burned to ash. Worth it, he said. I agree. Asriatha's voice was quiet. And I'll help. Teaching your people what to expect, how to respond. Consider it, professional consultation. Pro bono. I'll accept payment in those little biscuit things your people make. The ones with chocolate on top. Harry actually laughed. Full, real, surprised out of him. Digestives? Is that what they're called? Barbaric name. Exquisite taste. They stood together on the tower, demon and wizard, and the night stretched out around them, vast, unknown, full of consequence and possibility. The war was over. The future was unwritten. And somewhere in the space between one world and the next, something new was beginning. Harry didn't know what shape it would take. Didn't know what challenges waited in the days and months ahead, political, magical, dimensional. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty: whatever came, he would face it standing. As he always had. As he always would. No hiding. No fear. No hesitation. Just Harry Potter, and the choices he'd made, and the allies who stood beside him because he'd earned their presence. Below the tower, Hogwarts settled into its first peaceful night in a year. Students slept safely. Professors breathed easy. The wounded healed. The living mourned. The world turned. And high above it all, silhouetted against the stars, a young man who'd walked through hell and back watched over it with eyes that had seen the dark between worlds and hadn't flinched. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. New questions. New threats, perhaps, from the void or from his own world's fear of what he'd become. He'd handle them the way he handled everything. Head on. Chapter 5. What hath God wrought? 3 days after the Battle of Hogwarts, Harry Potter sat in the Hog's Head pub and drank a fire whiskey while Aberforth pretended not to watch him from behind the bar. The village was coming back to life. Shopkeepers were pulling boards off windows. Families were returning from hiding, carrying bundled possessions and wearing expressions that hadn't quite caught up with the news. The Death Eater checkpoints were gone, dismantled overnight by Order patrols, and for the first time in a year, people walked the streets of Hogsmeade without looking over their shoulders. Harry was alone. He'd asked for it, an hour, maybe 2, without someone needing something from him. The last 72 hours had been a relentless current of demands, decisions, and conversations. Kingsley needed his endorsement for the interim government. McGonagall needed his input on reopening the school. The Wisengamot, what remained of it, wanted testimony. The international press wanted interviews. Families of the dead wanted closure. Everyone wanted a piece of Harry Potter. So he'd slipped away. Down to the village, into the pub, where Aberforth had the good grace to pour whiskey and shut up. The door opened. Harry didn't look up until the chair across from him scraped back, and then he raised his eyes to find Severus Snape sitting down. The man looked like death. Not metaphorically, he was gaunt, gray-skinned, with dark hollows under his eyes and his black hair hanging lank around a face that had aged 10 years in the 3 days since the battle. His robes were plain, travel-worn. No headmaster's finery. No Death Eater mask. Just a man, exhausted, sitting across from the person he'd spent a decade simultaneously protecting and despising. They looked at each other. "Potter," Snape said. "Snape." Silence. Aberforth moved to the far end of the bar with the instinct of a man who knew when to disappear. "You know about the vow," Snape said. Not a question. His voice was raw, rougher than Harry remembered, like he'd been screaming or hadn't spoken in days. "I know about all of it. The vow, the plan, Dumbledore's death. The curse on his hand. Your role." Harry took a sip of his whiskey. "I figured it out in the abyss. Soul magic leaves signatures. When I destroyed the ring Horcrux, I could read the whole history of everyone who touched it. Including the curse that was eating Dumbledore alive." Snape's jaw worked. Something behind those black eyes, not quite relief, not quite pain. Something between. "I came to give you this." He reached into his robes and drew out a vial, small, crystal, filled with silvery substance that swirled like liquid thought. "Memories. Dumbledore instructed me to deliver them to you at the appropriate moment." He envisioned a different scenario. A twist of his thin lips. One where you were walking to your death and needed motivation. Harry looked at the vial but didn't take it. What's in them? Everything. My history with your mother. The prophecy. Dumbledore's plan. The truth about the Horcrux in your scar. Snape set the vial on the table between them. They're yours by right. Whether you view them is your choice. Harry considered. Then he picked up the vial and pocketed it. I'll look at them. Eventually. He met Snape's eyes. You spent 17 years playing a role that should have killed you. Double agent, murderer of the only man who trusted you, servant to the thing that murdered the woman you loved. I'm not going to pretend we're friends. But I'm not going to pretend you didn't sacrifice everything, either. Snape stared at him. Something cracked in that gaunt face, not breaking down, not weeping, just a fracture in the mask that let something human show through for the briefest moment. You're different, Snape said quietly. Everyone keeps telling me that. Not just, stronger. Different in the way you see people. Those black eyes were sharp, assessing. The boy I taught would have hexed me the moment I sat down. Would have screamed about his parents, about Dumbledore, about justice. The boy you taught was 16 and didn't understand anything. Harry shrugged. I've killed things older than civilizations. I've made deals with beings that would give you nightmares for the rest of your life. Perspective changes when you've walked through hell. Literally, apparently. The ghost of something that might have been a smile. Your demon army. Quite the entrance. It did the job. Snape was quiet for a moment. Then, what do you want from me, Potter? Testimony? Confession? I'll give whatever Kingsley requires for the tribunals, I don't want anything from you. Harry cut him off. You're free. That's what I want. You spent 17 years in chains, Dumbledore's chains, Voldemort's chains, your own guilt's chains. They're all broken now. What you do with that freedom is your problem. Snape sat very still. Processing. Harry could see the wheels turning, the spy's mind, always calculating angles, struggling to find the hidden agenda in a simple statement. There wasn't one. You're serious, Snape said. Dead serious. Go. Disappear. Brew potions in a cottage somewhere. Write a memoir. I don't care. But if you stay, if you want to be part of whatever comes next, then come back as yourself. Not as Dumbledore's tool or Voldemort's spy. As Severus Snape. The man stood. Slowly, like his joints ached. He looked down at Harry with an expression Harry had never seen on his face before, couldn't quite categorize it. Respect? Uncertainty? The disorientation of a man who'd lived in boxes so long he'd forgotten what open air felt like. Your mother, Snape said at the door, would not have gone to the demons. No, Harry agreed. She would have found another way. But she's not here. I am. Snape nodded once. Sharply. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him, and Harry was alone again with his whiskey and the quiet. He drank. The fire whiskey burned going down, and he let it. The afternoon sun was slanting through the pub windows when Hermione found him. She didn't scold him for disappearing, just sat down across from him and ordered a butterbeer with the ease of someone who'd spent a year in hiding and learned to take comfort where it appeared. You talked to Snape, she said. Not a question, she'd probably seen him leaving. He came to me. Gave me memories. We talked. And he's free. Whatever he does with it is his business. Hermione nodded. Sipped her butterbeer. Kingsley's announced the tribunal schedule. Trials start next week, Yaxley, Rowell, the Carrows when they're found. Malfoy's cooperating fully, he's already given testimony on 19 Death Eaters in exchange for consideration. Of course he has. Lucius would sell his own mother for leniency. His son's different. Hermione said it carefully, watching Harry's face. Draco. He came in this morning. Voluntarily. Turned himself in and offered to testify. Harry raised an eyebrow. Draco Malfoy. Voluntarily. He looked terrible. Thin, scared. He said, Hermione paused. He said he wanted to talk to you. Specifically. About what? He didn't say. But he wasn't defiant about it. He was, I don't know. Defeated. In a way that looked real. Harry considered. Draco Malfoy. The boy who'd made his school years miserable, who'd taken the mark at 16, who'd failed to kill Dumbledore because he wasn't actually a murderer at heart. A product of his upbringing, cruel, prejudiced, cowardly, but also young. As young as Harry. As shaped by forces beyond his control. I'll talk to him, Harry said. Not today. Tomorrow. Let him sit with his choices for a night. Hermione's lips twitched. That's either merciful or cruel. Both. Call it efficient. He finished his whiskey. What else? The International Confederation wants a formal audience. They're unsettled. The demon army made global news. Every magical government in the world is demanding to know if it could happen again. It won't. The army's gone. They don't know that. And they're not really asking about the army, they're asking about you. A wizard who can open portals to the demon dimension, who commands respect from abyssal entities, who can apparently absorb killing curses. She met his eyes. You frighten them, Harry. Good. Harry, no, I mean it. Good. Let them be frightened. He leaned forward. For a year, the international community watched Voldemort take Britain and did nothing. France sent thoughts and prayers. America issued a strongly worded statement. Makusa closed their borders. No one helped. No one intervened. His voice was level but there was iron beneath it. And now they're scared of me. Now they're concerned. Now they want audiences and assurances. Hermione didn't argue. She'd lived that year, lived through the abandonment, the isolation, the knowledge that the world was watching Britain burn and choosing not to act. They can have their audience, Harry said. And I'll tell them exactly what I told the press. I'm not a threat. I'm not building an empire. I'm a man who did what was necessary because no one else would. He stood, dropping coins on the table. And if they don't believe me, if they push, they can find out what happens when they push. You're not actually threatening the international magical community. I'm establishing boundaries. Harry's smile was thin. There's a difference. They left the pub together, stepping into the afternoon light. Hogsmeade was alive around them, people on the streets, children running, a woman arranging flowers in a window box with the careful attention of someone reclaiming normalcy. Harry watched them. Ordinary people, doing ordinary things, in a world that was suddenly and fundamentally safe. Because of him. Because of what he'd done. The weight of that was different from what he'd expected. Not heavy, just present. A constant awareness that his choices had shaped reality, and that reality had noticed. The Confederation meeting, he said as they walked. When? Friday. They want to come here, to Hogwarts. Neutral ground, they're calling it. Fine. But my generals attend. Non-negotiable. Hermione's step faltered slightly. You want to bring 3 demons to a diplomatic meeting with every magical government in the world. I want to be honest about what I am and who stands with me. Hiding them would be worse, it would suggest I'm ashamed or afraid. I'm neither. It's going to cause a scene. Let it. Harry glanced at her. Hermione, I appreciate the caution. I do. You're thinking about this politically, diplomatically, and you're not wrong to. But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life managing perceptions and tiptoeing around people's discomfort. I did nothing wrong. My allies did nothing wrong. The world can adjust. She was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed, small, surprised, shaking her head. You really have changed. The Harry I knew would have agonized over this. Would have worried about what everyone thought. That Harry didn't have an army of demons. Tends to simplify your decision-making. Clearly. She linked her arm through his as they walked up the road toward the castle. For what it's worth, I agree with you. Strategically. Showing strength now prevents challenges later. If you come to the table surrounded by power and completely transparent about it, it's much harder for anyone to frame you as a hidden threat. See? Strategy. I'm just saying, if you could phrase things slightly less like, find out what happens when they push, that would help the diplomatic tenor. I'll let you handle the phrasing. Thank you. That's literally all I ask. The Confederation meeting happened on Friday, as planned. Harry spent the intervening days dealing with the practical aftermath of the war. The captured Death Eaters were processed, charged, and scheduled for trial. The ministry was restructured under Kingsley's interim authority, corrupt officials removed, imperious victims cleared, departments restaffed. Hogwarts began repairs, structural damage from the battle, but also the deeper damage of a year under the Carrow's rule. Harry helped where he could. Not in the political machinations, that was Kingsley's domain and Hermione's growing expertise, but in the practical work. He helped clear debris from the grounds. Spent an afternoon with the house elves repairing the Great Hall's ceiling enchantment. Walked the corridors of the castle in the evenings, checking wards, renewing protections, making sure the building was safe. His demons helped too, in their own ways. Cael'thas, to everyone's surprise, turned out to be an exceptional engineer. He'd spent centuries building fortifications in the abyss, and the structural principles translated directly to the castle's repairs. He worked alongside the professors and ghost architects, his massive hands delicate when they needed to be, repositioning stones and reinforcing walls with a precision that drew admiring stares from even the most demon-skeptical staff. Seraphix taught. Not formally, she simply appeared in conversations about magical defense and offered insights that made the participants go very quiet and then ask many questions. Her knowledge of wardcraft was deeper than anything in the Hogwarts library, drawn from traditions that predated human magic by millennia. Hermione trailed her like a devoted student, filling notebook after notebook. And Azriath talked to people. Students, mostly. The ones who were curious, who asked questions, who weren't too afraid to approach. He answered them with his particular blend of sardonic wit and genuine knowledge, and slowly, in the way that contact with the unfamiliar always worked, the fear began to erode into familiarity. Not comfort, not yet, but the beginning of understanding. By Friday, the castle felt almost normal. Battle-scarred, changed, but alive in a way it hadn't been in a year. The Confederation delegates arrived by international port key at noon, 17 representatives from magical governments across the globe. The American delegation was the largest, 5 people including Macusa's president. France sent their minister. Germany, Japan, Brazil, Egypt, Australia, the major magical nations, all present, all with carefully neutral expressions that failed to hide their nervousness. They met in the Great Hall. Harry had insisted, not a closed room, not a private office, but the hall itself, restored and bright, filled with the normal lunch-hour bustle of students and staff. A statement, this is our world. This is what we protected. You're visiting our home. Harry sat at the center of the head table, flanked by Kingsley and McGonagall. His 3 generals stood behind him, Azriath to his left, Seraphix to his right, Cael'thas like a wall of dark metal at the back. The delegates sat opposite, their aides and security positioned around the hall's perimeter. Every single delegate was staring at the demons. Trying not to. Failing. Macusa's president, a tall, silver-haired woman named Thornwood, spoke first. Her voice was controlled, professional, but Harry could see the tension in her shoulders. Mr. Potter. On behalf of the International Confederation of Wizards, we extend our congratulations on the defeat of the Dark Lord Voldemort. The international community is relieved that this threat to magical stability has been eliminated. Thank you, Harry said. The word was polite and completely empty. However, Thornwood's eyes moved to Caelvath's, lingered, returned to Harry. The manner of this victory raises significant concerns. The deployment of abyssal entities, in any capacity, contravenes 17 international statutes, for Confederation Accords, and the foundational principles of the Interdimensional Non-Interaction Treaty of 1407. I'm familiar with the treaties, Harry said. I'm also familiar with the fact that none of those treaties anticipated a situation where every signatory nation abandoned one of their own to a Dark Lord's conquest. The temperature in the room shifted. Several delegates stiffened. Thornwood's mouth tightened. Britain's internal conflict, the French minister began, was not internal. Harry's voice cut cleanly. Voldemort had international operations. He was recruiting from continental Europe, targeting Muggle-born refugees who fled to your countries, infiltrating your governments. This was not Britain's problem. It was everyone's problem. And everyone chose to look away. Silence. So yes, Harry continued. I broke your treaties. I opened a gate to the abyss and brought through an army. I did it because it was necessary, because no help was coming, and because I'd rather violate 17 statutes than let my people die. He let that sit for exactly 2 seconds. The army is gone. It has returned to its realm. The gate is closed. I have no intention of opening another unless circumstances demand it. And what circumstances would demand it? The Japanese delegate leaned forward. What threshold, Mr. Potter, would justify, in your judgment, another such incursion? A threat of equivalent scale with equivalent inaction from the international community. Harry held the man's gaze. But I don't think that's likely. Because I think this conversation is going to result in everyone at this table committing to never let a situation like Britain's occupation happen again. Aren't I right? More silence. But the quality of it changed, from adversarial to thoughtful. Harry could see calculations happening behind those diplomatic faces. He was offering them an out. A framework. Help each other, and I won't need to call the demons again. Thornwood was the first to see it. Something shifted in her expression, reluctant respect, maybe, or just the recognition of a skilled negotiator. You're proposing a mutual defense agreement. I'm proposing that the international community stops pretending that sovereignty means ignoring genocide. Harry leaned back slightly. The details are above my pay grade, Kingsley and your diplomats can hash out the specifics. But the principle is simple, when a Dark Lord rises, the world responds. Together. Immediately. Not after a year of hand-wringing while children are tortured in classrooms. He felt Neville's presence somewhere behind him in the hall, the boy who'd been tortured by the Carrows, who'd kept fighting alone while the world watched. Harry didn't look back, but he felt it. And the entities behind you? The Egyptian delegate spoke for the first time, an older man with shrewd eyes. Your generals. They remain in our world. What assurances can you offer regarding they're not prisoners. They're not weapons. They're individuals who chose to stay. Harry's voice was firm. I'm not going to offer assurances about them like they're dangerous animals I'm leashing. They're sitting right there, you can ask them directly. 17 diplomats turned to look at 3 demons. Asriath smiled. It was his most charming smile, which, on a 7-foot being with grey skin and amber eyes, still managed to be deeply unsettling. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice carrying the dry precision of a being who'd navigated abyssal politics for 6 millennia. I appreciate your concern. Allow me to be brief. I am here because Harry Potter is the most interesting thing to happen in my very long existence, and I have no desire to conquer, destroy, or otherwise inconvenience your world. I find your chocolate biscuits delightful, your architecture quaint, and your politics, while primitive, amusing. He spread his hands. I am, essentially, a tourist. A very old, very powerful tourist who happens to have excellent taste in company. Seraphics leaned forward slightly. I would add that any attempt to forcibly remove us from this realm would be ill-advised. Not as a threat. Simply as a statement of practical reality. Her smile was sweet. We're here peacefully. Let's keep it that way. Cael'dat said nothing. He didn't need to. His presence alone was statement enough. The Confederation meeting lasted another 2 hours. By the end, the delegates had agreed, in principle, to a mutual defense framework. A joint task force for dark wizard threats. An exchange of intelligence, resources, aid. Not everything Harry wanted, not everything the world needed, but a start. A crack in the wall of isolationism that had let Voldemort flourish. When the delegates filed out, several of them stopped to shake Harry's hand. A few even nodded to his generals, stiff, uncertain nods, but acknowledgments nonetheless. Progress. Slow, imperfect, human progress. That evening, Harry climbed to the astronomy tower one last time. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, and the grounds of Hogwarts stretched below him, green and scarred and healing. Students moved in clusters, their voices rising on the spring air. Laughter. Actual laughter, drifting up from the courtyards where a group of third years were chasing each other with harmless jinxes. His 3 generals found him there, as they always did. Drawn to him or simply attuned to his rhythms, Harry wasn't sure which, and it didn't matter. Asriath leaned against the railing, human disguise off, his true form sharp and angular against the sunset. Seraphics perched on the parapet itself, wings spread slightly, catching the last warmth. Cael'dat stood behind them all, a wall of silence and copper eyes. You're thinking again, Asriath observed. Should I be concerned? Not thinking. Feeling. Harry looked out at the landscape, this world, his world, changed and free. It's strange. I spent a year with one goal, kill Voldemort. Every day, every fight, every pact, all pointed at one moment. And now it's done. The goal is achieved. And I don't know what the next goal is. That's not a problem, Seraphic said. That's life. You mortals, you're so obsessed with purpose, with direction. Sometimes it's enough to simply be. To exist in the world and see what it offers. Says the being who was bored for 4,000 years. Which is precisely why I recognize the value of not being bored now. She tilted her head, those black eyes catching the fading light. You have options, Harry. More than most beings ever get. You're young, powerful, free. You have allies in 2 dimensions. You could do anything. Anything, Harry repeated. The word felt vast. You could teach, Asriath offered. You seem to have a knack for it. Your DA, those children, they fought well because you taught them to fight well. You could explore, Seraphics added. The abyss has realms you never visited. Other dimensions exist, the void between worlds is vast and full of places that aren't trying to consume reality. You could fight, Cael'dat said. 2 words, but loaded. There is always something worth fighting. Harry considered each option. All of them appealed. None of them felt urgent. I think, he said slowly, that right now, for the first time in my life, I don't have to decide immediately. There's no prophecy pushing me. No Dark Lord breathing down my neck. No Dumbledore with a 20-year plan. He breathed the evening air, clean, cool, smelling of grass and lake water and the particular ancient stone scent of Hogwarts. I can just, figure it out. Revolutionary, Asriath said dryly. Harry Potter, taking his time. Don't get used to it. I wouldn't dream of it. Below them, the castle doors opened and familiar figures emerged onto the grounds. Ron's red hair was unmistakable. Hermione beside him, gesturing animatedly. Neville and Ginny behind them, Luna trailing with her gaze on the sky. They were looking for him. Harry could tell from the way Ron's head turned, scanning the towers, the grounds, searching for the silhouette he knew would be up high somewhere. Harry raised a hand. Ron spotted him, waved back, shouted something lost to the wind that was probably insulting and definitely affectionate. "Your people," Seraphix said softly. "My people," Harry agreed. He stood on the tower for one more moment. Letting it settle, all of it. The year of hell, the battle, the victory, the uncertain future. The fact that he'd walked into the abyss a broken boy and walked out something new. The fact that he'd saved his world not through love or sacrifice or noble death, but through will and fury and the refusal to accept a fate someone else had written for him. Dumbledore had wanted him to be a martyr. Voldemort had wanted him to be a victim. The world had wanted him to be a symbol. Harry had chosen to be himself. Whatever that meant. Whatever it would mean, in the days and years ahead, with demons at his back and friends at his side in a world that didn't quite know what to make of him. He'd figure it out the way he'd figured everything else out. By refusing to flinch. By moving forward. By being exactly what he was, no more, no less. A young man who'd walked through hell and come back with fire in his hands and an army at his command. Who'd killed the darkest wizard in history and then sat down for a cup of tea. Who'd looked into the void between worlds and the void had looked away first. Harry Potter. The boy who lived. The man who conquered. And whatever came next. He vaulted over the railing, Seraphix laughing, Azriath sighing with theatrical exasperation, Caeldath's following without hesitation, and dropped toward the grounds below, abyssal energy cushioning his fall, landing light on the grass and walking toward his friends with the evening sun at his back and the future wide open ahead of him. Ron reached him first, throwing an arm around his shoulders. "We're going to the Three Broomsticks." Rosmerta's opened back up. "First round's on you since you're basically a war hero." "I'm always a war hero." "Fine. First 3 rounds, then." "I don't have any money on me." "You have a demon who can terrify people into giving you free drinks." "I resent that characterization," Azriath called from behind them, landing gracefully on the lawn. "I prefer to think of it as aggressively persuasive charisma." "Whatever it is," Ginny said, falling into step beside them, "it's getting us free drinks." "I'm in," Seraphix announced, furling her wings and falling into something approaching a human stride. "I've never been to a pub. This should be educational." "It'll be something," Neville muttered. They walked together, humans and demons, friends and allies, survivors of a war that had ended 3 days ago, down the path toward Hogsmeade. The evening was warm, the sky was clear, and somewhere behind them, Hogwarts stood tall against the darkening blue, its lights coming on one by one like stars finding their places. Caeldath walked at the rear. Always watching. Always ready. But even he seemed, if not relaxed, then something adjacent to it. Something that acknowledged the absence of threat. The presence of peace. Luna fell back to walk beside him. The massive war demon looked down at her, this small, strange human who had never once shown him fear, and something that might have been warmth moved through his copper eyes. "Do you like butterscotch?" Luna asked him. "I don't know what that is." "You'll love it. Everyone loves it." She patted his armored forearm like one might pat a particularly large horse. "Come on. I'll get you some." Caeldath followed. Because Luna asked. Because the world was strange and new and there was butterscotch to try. Harry walked at the center of his people, living, free, unafraid, and the road ahead was long and unknown and full of possibility, and he wanted every step of it. The war was over. Life was beginning. And Harry Potter, who had been a weapon, a symbol, a sacrifice, a prophecy, was finally, simply, himself. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything.